taking over the world. Well, we are on the air. Okay, welcome everybody. This is Parks and Recreation meeting, November 28th, 2017. First, we start off with roll call. Catherine's back. Welcome back.
Thank you. Commissioner Cribbs? Here. Commissioner Greenfield?
Here.
Commissioner Lemaire?
Here.
Commissioner McCauley?
Present.
Commissioner McDougall?
Here.
Sorry. Commissioner Moss?
Here.
Commissioner Reckdahl?
Here. Okay. Next, we have agenda changes, requests, deletions. Okay, we'll move on to oral communications. Oh, sorry. Thank you, Peter. Yep, I'm sorry about that. Oral communications, we have no speaker cards, so we'll move on to department report.
Good evening, Chair and Commissioners. Kristen O'Kane, Community Services. I have a few announcements, and then I'll turn it over to Darren Anderson, who has some more updates. So the first thing I wanted to mention is on December 5th, we're having a community meeting and stakeholder meeting on the Baylands Comprehensive Conservation Plan that's currently underway. The meeting is December 5th from 10:30 to noon, and it's at the Mitchell Park Community Center. We do, I believe, have 2 commissioners who have already agreed to participate, and so if I would ask that if anyone else did want to attend, to either let Darren or I know. It's a community meeting, but it's not a public meeting in the sense that we're not posting it like we would a normal public meeting, so we just want to ensure we aren't violating the Brown Act. But if anyone would like to come or would at least like the materials from the meeting, please let Darren or I know.
Do you have any idea what kind of crowd we're getting? Darren, have you gotten feedback from people?
No, the typical stakeholder group is 25 approximately, and that's a mix of some staff and traditional stakeholders of the Baylands. This has been posted all throughout the Baylands. The rangers are talking to people and putting on their social media. It's really hard to tell because that stakeholder group is the crew that usually comes to most of those public meetings, so I really don't know how many extra.
But somewhere in the neighborhood of 20 would be a guess.
I would think.
Okay, thank you.
And this is December 5th, right?
That's correct. And then the second announcement I wanted to make is that this Friday is the annual tree lighting at Lytton Plaza, and that event starts at 5:30, and it would be great to see you all there. And one last thing, as I wanted to mention that the senior New Year's Eve brunch that we have every year is going to be held on Friday, December 29th this year, but I wanted to let everyone know that tickets are now on sale. If you're interested in attending, it will be at Mitchell Park Community Center, again in the El Palo Alto room.
This is for senior citizens? You said senior?
It's geared towards seniors, but
okay.
Anyone can attend.
Okay.
And I'll turn it over to Darren now for his updates.
I just have Darren Anderson, Open Space Parks and Golf. I've got just a few updates for you. One pertains to the closed trails up at Foothills Park. This is both our Costa Noan and Los Trancos Trail. Approximately 3 miles of the Los Trancos Trail and about 0.83 miles of the Costa Noan have been closed, going on a year. And I think we've recounted often enough the steps we've taken so far, but since we last updated the commission, I wanted to give you the latest. That's we've walked the site with the 2 consultants to do the biological and cultural evaluations. I went with them personally. We hiked the trail. This is the rerouted section, or proposed rerouted section. The intent of the biological and cultural to see if there are any issues that would cause us to have to move that proposed trail somewhere else. I just got the reports back the other day, and there are no cultural issues with any of the proposed reroutes. There were a couple wood rat trails in close proximity to the rerouted one, so there's two options. One is we move that proposed alignment over a little bit, or we'll hire a consultant, another biologist, to work with us during construction. They have to be on site to ensure that we're not affecting the wood rat at all. So it'll probably be some combination of the two, depending on if I can find 30 to 60 feet away from that trail alignment that doesn't have another wood rat nest. So we shall see. So that's the status on the culture and biological. They're making a couple edits, and I should have those reports back with my feedback. I also requested a price quote from that same consultant to do the necessary CEQA analysis, which is the next step before construction. So they're researching exactly what CEQA analysis is necessary. Sometimes CEQA can be very broad, sometimes it can be a little more smaller in scope. So they're doing that homework for me, and I should have an answer by the end of the week in terms of what that CEQA looks like and how much it'll cost. If it's over $10,000, I'll have to get 3 bids. But I'll expedite that process. I've already got some consultants in line that I know to go to for this kind of work, and we'll proceed once I have that information. The other information I wanted to share with you.
One question.
Sure.
CEQA would take a couple months?
Yes.
Okay.
Approximately.
And then at that point, we're free to go to bids?
Yes.
For the construction?
Yeah. Now, the CEQA analysis might put a constraint on the window of work. That's entirely possible. One of them would be the bird nesting season. That was actually in the biological assessment. I've asked for them to consider an alternative, such as, again, another biologist to do a survey for nesting birds in the construction area. If we're limited to that bird nesting season, it really leaves only a month or so outside the rainy season, which I don't think is practical. So again, I've asked for that change in the biological survey with that stipulation that there's some other alternatives to consider that won't hold us up.
Would this involve hand construction, or they actually have machines?
It'll be a mix. The contractor that we've traditionally used for a lot of the trail work has a mini excavator. It's no wider than my shoulders really, but very handy. And then he usually supplements that with 2 or 3 staff people to come in with hand tools.
Okay, thank you.
Sure. The other update pertained to the Cubberley bleachers. About 6 months ago or so, there are 2 very large bleachers on either side of the field traditionally. One had failed, and we replaced that about 6 months ago with 2 smaller bleachers. The other side, very large bleachers that's been used a lot of times for training. People will run up and down those bleachers for exercise, and sometimes for watching games and events on the synthetic turf field at Cubberley. It had to be closed. The wood's badly broken. The structure itself is sound, and I think I might have mentioned to the commission before that we had looked into options of complete replacement. The costs were through the roof, upwards in the way of $300,000 for a comparably sized bleacher, and we could do the repairs ourselves, buying the wood and having a contractor demo the existing and putting it in ourselves for somewhere around $15,000 to $20,000. Far more reasonable and practical and made sense. I last updated, I think, the commission saying it looked to be a 3 to 4 week process. I was wrong. I apologize. The purchasing process is taking longer than we thought, and the materials themselves, that quantity of wood for the bleachers, is an 8-week time period to get it. So it's a little longer than I thought, and I apologize for that. We'll have it completed by the end of February, beginning of March is the realistic time schedule. But fortunately, just across the field, there are 2 bleachers existing for people that need a place to sit. So it's not as if we're out without bleachers. And that's all my updates.
Yeah.
Regarding the bleacher timeline, is the ETA posted on the bleachers?
Yes, I had the old sign up until recently, but we're correcting. I just got the new information yesterday morning.
Okay, great. Thank you.
Okay, next we move on to draft minutes. We need to approve those. Does anyone have any comments or corrections from the draft minutes? Do I have a motion to approve them? So moved. Second?
Second.
All in favor? Aye. Opposed? Okay, minutes are approved. Move on to the first business, and this long time waiting, Pierce Park Dog Park. Okay, Darren.
Good evening. Darren Anderson, Open Space Parks and Golf. I'm very pleased to come to you tonight requesting an action item to seek a recommendation from the Commission for Council to adopt the Park Improvement Ordinance to add a dog park at Pierce Park. We've discussed this topic extensively, so I'll keep my presentation brief. Let me start, though, with a correction. Commissioner McCauley helped me by finding an error on my draft park improvement ordinance. This is Section 2. There's reference to the Baylands Lucy Evans Interpretive Center. Let me read what it should say. It should say in Section 2, council hereby approves a plan for construction of a dog off-leash area at Pierce Park. Hereto attached as Exhibit A as part of the official plan for construction of a dog off-leash area at Pierce Park. So I'll make those corrections. I think the commission can still approve that. We'll move it on to council. A real quick background. In 2006, staff hosted a community meeting to specifically talk to the community about adding a dog park at Pierce. The community was generally in support of that idea. The big advantages of Pierce were the size. We could have a dog park at this site that's 0.72 acres, which would be by far the biggest dog park we have, and also the proximity to the existing train tracks in that park, which helps negate the noise issue associated with dog parks often. At the March 2017 commission meeting, the commission expressed support for the idea of adding a dog park at Pierce, and staff developed the design using feedback from the commission, the ad hoc committee, the community at public meetings, both recent and past, and feedback we had learned over the years at our 3 other dog parks. At the July 2017 commission meeting, the commission expressed support for moving forward with the park improvement ordinance as soon as it could. We have done so, got the approvals from planning, and the next steps in the process would be the council approval with the PIO, if the commission saw fit to approve it. Open the design one more time. Again, this is the location, and here's the design. The design elements were in the staff report, but if there's any questions, I'm glad to go over that. And with that, I pass it on to the ad hoc if they have any comments, but maybe before I do, I just want to thank this commission, thank our prior commissions, thank this ad hoc committee, thank our stakeholders and our community for their patience for how long it took to get here. I'm really grateful, and I think we're very close to building our first new dog park in over 25 years.
Wow. Go ahead.
Please.
Well, all I would say, Darren, is that I think we're all very excited. Everybody's smiling up here. It's wonderful to have it on its way. And so when do you anticipate it will be completed?
Excuse me, thank you for that. I think the longest process will be soliciting bids and hiring contractors, somewhere to 2 to 3 month process for that. The construction itself is about 3 weeks, relatively quick. So I'll work with purchasing to expedite that 2 to 3 month window as much as possible. I've worked with Peter, and he's ready to go and get this out to bid. So as soon as we can, we're going to.
So maybe spring?
Yes, I believe so. I believe that's very possible.
Well, that's great, and thank you and all the staff for everything, and certainly the stakeholders. I see some of them in the audience who tried so hard for so long, so thank you for that. And as a dog grandmother, I'm very happy that the dog park will be open.
Do you want to say anything else?
Just thank you again.
Okay. Howard, I see you out there. Do you want to say any words, or?
Yes, thank you. Howard Hoffman, representing Palo Alto dog owners. And we would like to just thank the commissioners, the previous commissioners, and particularly the staff for all their efforts on this. And we're very excited at the prospect of finally getting a new dog park, and we hope that it won't take 25 years to get the next one after this. Thank you very much.
Okay. Thank you, Howard. Thank you for your patience also. We appreciate this. And, oh, 2 Howard Hoffmans. Okay. Does anyone else have questions, comments?
So I just have a question about, is it appropriate to ask a few questions about the future now, or should we go ahead and do the park ordinance that we need to do and then come back to that? I don't want to rain on this parade, but I do have a couple of questions.
Yeah, I have some going forward questions also. So anything going forward, let's wait till after the vote.
Perfect.
and
That's
okay.
great. Thank you.
Don?
I just have one question, Darren. In the presentation, there's a small picture here, and the picture shows some signs. And I know I've been obnoxious before about what the signs are, but I can tell you I went to the Adobe Creek presentation last night, and I would say that the thing that almost derailed it was the signs, the signage, and I would not like that to happen here. I'd like to suggest you anticipate the question of what kind of signs might they be, how high might they be, et cetera. It was a big issue last night.
Thank you for that. On our next topic, agenda topic, we'll be getting into a little bit about the park rules, dog park rules, and the signage associated with that.
Good, thank you.
Yeah, Don, just for the broader commission's benefit, we had a fairly lengthy discussion about signage when we met with stakeholders last month, and we can talk about that when we get to the park rules component.
Good, thank you.
I do have one question about the park, the turf and the mulch. Right now it's a mixture of that, and we're going to keep it that. Is there a preference in the dog community for mulch versus grass, or is it some people like one, some people like the other?
Before we get comments from the public, if we'd like to, I can share what I've heard, and it's I think the preference is grass if you can keep it in great shape. And that's often the challenge in the dog park. We're a little bit aided here in that we've got 0.72 acres of it, but about half is mulch. So I think it's going to be a mix. I think the areas that are currently mulch will remain mulch, largely because they're under a tree canopy. It'd be very difficult to make it grass anyways. So I think what we're going to try to do is just put in good dog paw friendly mulch
And
then sustain the turf.
Yeah, the problem is that lawn gets beat up, so I guess maybe the question is what is preferred, a beat up lawn or mulch? And is mulch objectionable to the dog community? I guess that's a better question.
I can tell you from the experience of Mitchell Park, where we've got half turf and half decomposed granite, that we had asked, which way do you want to go? A number of times we'd go out, and that site, the turf is pretty small and difficult to sustain, and we thought, would you like to go to something else? Would you like either mulch or more decomposed granite? And there was a definite sizable community that wanted turf. Yeah. They just had frustration about you have to rest that turf. You have to do restorations almost annually.
Well, this is big enough that maybe we can fence off portions of it and give it some rest now.
Yeah, and of course we'll do feedback with this being a new dog park and see if the grass is fading. We'll come out and talk to users and see if there's other alternatives, if they want to expand the mulch in certain areas. Certainly don't want dogs in the mud.
Yes. Any questions, or do we move on to a motion? Do I have a motion? We'll look at ad hoc.
I would move to approve the park improvement ordinance as amended, as mentioned by Darren.
Okay. You want to do a second? Please. Okay, we have a second. All in favor? Aye. Opposed? Okay. Passed. Okay, we'll move on to the next item, which is the change of rules. And Howard, I guess you could talk first, Darren, and then we'll move on. We have one speaker. Howard wants to say a few words.
Very good. Darren Anderson with Open Space Parks and Golf. Tonight's item on dog park rules is a discussion topic, not action. In preparation for opening this new dog park, it seems appropriate to review and update our existing dog park rules. On October 10th, staff met with a commission ad hoc committee and a few dog park stakeholders to discuss rules that would be appropriate. The first page of the staff report lists the existing rules that are found in the city's park and open space regulations, R132. And those existing rules define which parks have designated off-leash areas, the hours of operation for those dog parks, They require picking up of dog waste, prohibiting of leaving dogs unattended, and require putting a muzzle on aggressive dogs. But rather than editing those, because almost every single one we wanted to reword and change substantially, we started from scratch. And so on the second page of the staff report, you see these new proposed, completely rewritten rules. All the proposed rules are fairly common and consistently found in other municipalities' dog parks, which is, we did a lot of checking of what other agencies have used and picked and pulled ones that seemed most appropriate for our site. So rather than read each one, I want to briefly discuss some thought process behind a few of them that really stand out and beg conversation. The first of which is the no more than 3 dogs per person rule. While this is a common rule at many other dog parks, it's new to Palo Alto. We haven't had that. It has been an issue. We have a lot of commercial dog walkers, and it's been increasing in recent years, but for many years they would come out and use the dog parks and bring more than 3 dogs. Number of residents throughout the years have come to me, and again, last 2 years, it's been more complaining about this, saying we want you to do something. We don't have anything on the books that precludes that. And so they've been advocating for me to add something, and this is the opportune time to address their concern. I also spoke with a commercial dog walker, and he was very sympathetic and understood that this was not popular, and there are very few places that allow it, and said, I really want to work with you. Is there a way we can do this? And I said, what I can promise is that I'll bring this to the commission when the day comes and express that you're willing to work with us. He mentioned that financially it's difficult for them to have like a 1-to-3 ratio of their dog workers. They're typically more along the lines of 1-to-5 or 1-to-6, which was not something our residents wanted. The ones we've spoken to do not want that. And so there's that conflict, but I wanted to be forthright and share that with you. Our group that discussed it felt that it is not reasonable for someone to bring more than 3 dogs to a dog park and be able to supervise those dogs, which is an important part of bringing a dog to the dog park for the safety of those dogs and everyone else in that area. And it just isn't possible to take 6 dogs and really be looking after them and ensuring you're picking up after them. So that was the rationale for that rule. The second I wanted to talk about was the small dog section being for 35 pounds or less, and the mixed dog section is for both large and small dogs. So we went back and forth on this issue of what's the right limit to put on this, and we weren't quite sure. Again, when I looked at different municipalities, there was a big range, and I think you can make compelling arguments for a lot of different ones. This is where we settled after discussing it for about an hour. This one rule was among several that we discussed, but this one in particular was a challenge to come up with what's the right one. And our stakeholders who are in the audience today were instrumental in saying, I think this is the right weight. I've been in this park, I've seen the kind of dogs and the weights, and my personal opinion is we think 35 pounds or less is appropriate for the small dog area. Last rule I want to discuss is the dog park hours. In our proposed rules, it says they're from 7 a.m. to 9 p.m. The existing rules have the hours from sunrise to 10:30 p.m., which is consistent with the general park hours, the normal park hours for all our parks. However, sunrise is at 5:30 during the summer at certain times, which is very early to have dogs in the dog park, and 10:30 p.m. year-round is also pretty late to have dog parks. Now, all of our existing dog parks are unlit, and so would this one, so it might not be a place where they want to come. But our group, as we discussed this, felt like 7 to 9 was more reasonable, and that if there were dogs barking or being loud or obnoxious or problematic after or before those hours, it would give some recourse to neighbors to take action and call for help from animal services. Whereas if you stuck with the original hours and they're barking, the hands are tied of those law enforcement officials. The ad hoc committee and the stakeholders also discussed that in addition to a sign with these general rules, that we should also add a friendly, welcoming sign asking visitors to be considerate of neighbors and help keep the dog park clean and quiet. And that concludes my presentation. But again, I'd like to thank the ad hoc committee, Brian Stell and Howard Hoffman, for helping compose these draft rules.
Okay, before we go to the commission, we have a speaker. Howard Hoffman wants to speak on the dog park rules. I'll take the sheet here.
Yes, thank you again. And again, I wanted to commend the staff, particularly Darren Anderson, on not just what we came up with, but the whole process. And I thought that it was very inclusive, and the improvements in the rules, I think, are going to be better for the people and the dogs of Palo Alto. So thank you all for considering this.
Okay. Thank you, Howard. We have one more speaker here. Okay. And this is Brian Stell.
Hi, I'm Brian Stell, and I have no great news. I go there every day, and I talk with the people about the park and try to get, are there any things that we're not considering? And so far, everything that Darren's discussed has been exactly in line with basically what I've heard from people at the park. There has been no, like, this is really not what I like. There hasn't been any of that. The issue of the small dog area has been asked about, but I agree with Darren that it's because it's under trees, you're not going to grow grass there. People have, for the big and mixed use, they've repeatedly asked for grass. I think the assumption is it'll be nice grass and not ripped up muddy grass, but that's a different issue. I tend to have called Darren's coworker Mark about once every 2 or 3 months to have broken sprinklers fixed, because I care about mud puddles for the dogs. And when there's a broken sprinkler, that's a problem. Otherwise, everything, including all the rules, are pretty much in agreement with everybody. The one rule that I think a little bit differently about, and I've heard some other people, is the weight of the dogs. And my concern is not the dogs interacting like a big dog bullying a small dog. That doesn't happen that much. In fact, often small dogs bully big dogs. That's kind of more common. But what I do see is my dog plays with another dog, and they are pretty rough. They're not mean, they don't draw blood, but they're rough and tumble. And I'm still a little concerned about a 35-pound dog rolling on top of a 9-pound dog. So my personal preference is to go a little bit lower, but I would live with 35 pounds, and that would be okay with me. And that's basically I think everybody's can't wait for the park to get started. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you, Brian. Okay, now we'll go to the commission. People have comments, questions. David.
I have 2 quick questions. The first one is, I'd heard that AstroTurf versus mulch, that sometimes it's better, sometimes it's worse. What did you decide, why didn't you go with some AstroTurf instead of mulch?
Yeah, good question. The synthetic turf alternative as a surfing is actually pretty popular, and it seems to have gained in popularity recently. At a lot of our meetings, I heard that as a theme from a number of people, which wasn't always the case. Before that, there were sometimes concerns about having dogs in synthetic turf, and that seems to have changed as a theme in the last couple of years, and most notably at those public meetings last year. Predominantly, the reason why we haven't considered it is the cost is so much higher than maintaining natural turf or mulch. It's really significant. You have to have an irrigation system for one, because you've got to be constantly washing down the urine out of there, or it can smell pretty bad. They bring in sanitizing, usually consultants or contractors to come in and spray sanitizers on there too. But it is popular, and I actually think that at some point we should consider it, but it wouldn't fit under a $150,000 budget by a long shot for a project like this.
Okay, I had no idea. I thought the natural turf was far, far more expensive, but I'm wrong. The second question I had is about the professional dog walkers. So really, the only alternative they have is to leave 3 dogs in the truck and take 3 dogs out, run them around, then put them in the truck and take the next 3 dogs out. But I'm wondering, did we consider charging them for exclusive usage of one dog park for X hours in a day? And it could be 5:30 in the morning to 7 a.m. or 9 to 10 p.m., or it could be in the middle of the day for an hour, and they get exclusive use of it for their 6 dogs. And if there's 2 or 3, then they have to do it once a week, or every 3rd day. I don't know. Did Did that come up at all?
It didn't come up with our discussions with the public nor with the ad hoc, but I had that discussion with the people who called me concerned. I was trying to see if there was a way, before coming to the commission, is there something we could do that would work for you? And unanimously, I want to say, when I say a lot of people, I think over the last 2 or 3 years, I'm talking about maybe 20 complaints about this issue. And each time I would say, is there a way we can make this work? Do you have ideas or suggestions? And we'd kick around some of those things too, if there could be hours of operation that might fit. And I never got concurrence on that. They were all opposed to the idea of generally anybody bringing in more than 3, and they just dislike the idea of commercial activity inside their dog park.
Yeah, and I'm talking about that they would pay for that.
Yeah, yeah.
Okay, that's all I had.
Just one quick question. I'm wondering why the violations warning rule was omitted, the last rule on the current list?
You know, I didn't think it was necessary. These rules are citable, whether I add a thing that says you're citable or not. So having been a park ranger and issued citations, I don't need that to be on there to cite you. I guess we could add it, we certainly can if you think it helps. As we discuss the rules, oftentimes, unless you're going to go with an enormous sign, which we probably aren't, it becomes hard to read when we clutter it up. And so for the most part, it's going to be that kind of sign. And rule signs generally are the kind that aren't written so you can see it from a far away way. It's the more kind that you would reference if you had a problem with someone who's violating it and say, you know, excuse me, there's a sign here that says you can't do A, B, C, and D. But I just kind of thought it was unnecessary, but I'm glad to add it in if we think collectively it needs to be there.
I don't have strong feelings about it. I was curious on the rationale.
Yeah.
So that's a good explanation. Thank you.
You bet.
So I have a question that I'd be interested in the committee's comments on. The number 5 there is dogs behaving aggressively. And I'm wondering if wording that says dogs displaying aggressive behavior or something, to me, behaving aggressively means they bit somebody and now it's too late, as opposed to somebody who's just making a dog that's making an awful lot of noise and is behaving aggressively. I don't know if the wording makes any difference. It doesn't make any difference to the dog, I know that, but does it make any difference to the dog owner in removing a dog that's intimidating everybody else, even if it isn't biting them?
To me, those 2 phrases are interchangeable, but...
Yeah, I agree with you that I think the phrases may be interchangeable. From my own perspective, as a dog owner who takes his dog to socialize with other dogs in parks, I will tell you that there's a whole kind of range of dog behaviors. And, you know, some dogs growl when they're playing, right? And so some people might be, you know, afraid of that sort of thing. And yet it's totally just play. As Brian was mentioning, you know, his dog and another large dog might, you know, mouth and wrestle and do all those other sorts of things that dogs do, and yet that might be, to a person who wasn't familiar with that type of dog behavior, might be viewed as aggressive. So I think that the language as it is probably sufficient. Again, I don't know that there's a distinction in my mind between what you had proposed and what's there presently. I kind of agree with Keith on that point. But moreover, I don't want to create a circumstance where, you know, you have people kind of tattling on one another or something like that, you know, kind of taking too fine interpretation of these rules. I think that straightforward, you know, as pithy as we can be with these rules is the best approach. So let me use that as a segue real quickly, and then I'll let Ann dive in too. The second to last one, excuse me, is all dog bites must be reported to the city of Palo Alto. Are we thinking that this is dog bites of people or dogs biting other dogs?
You know, I had understood it to be either. So if there was any bite, a bite on another dog and a bite on a person, that we would call animal services.
Yeah, again, I just wonder, again, it's my own kind of experience that there's a lot of dogs who mouth and play, and it's, you know, not an aggressive thing at all. It's totally playful. I wouldn't want to have a circumstance where people kind of misinterpret a circumstance and and view that as something that they call animal services over. I wonder whether it might not be the better approach, and we don't need to land on a conclusion about this tonight, but rather just to provide the number for Palo Alto Animal Services and leave out the part about dog bites. I think obviously if a dog ever bites a person, or if a dog bites another dog in a malicious way, that it's going to get reported.
And I could also follow up with our superintendent of animal services to get his take on that. It's a good point, and I could flesh it out further as well.
No, all I would add to that is I think the ad hoc and the people who were involved tried to make the rules and as pithy, as you say, as possible, so that they would be easy to understand and fairly straightforward, but not to have too many rules, and make it relatively friendly, like we're kind of all in this together. So I think that's achieved this, and I think they're good. We also, I believe Darren talked about the fact that we could review any of these rules in the year, maybe getting back together, talking about the weight of the dog, the 35-pound dog, as opposed to should it be a lesser weight. Perhaps listen to the 3 dogs versus 4 dogs, but I think we'll probably stick to 3 dogs. And then the opening and closing hours was something we wanted to hear more input about, but we thought it was good to get these started, and then in a year come back and get back together and review.
Absolutely.
The idea is that these...
I appreciate your comments, and thanks for that. I support it.
The idea is that these are going to be posted outside of every dog park,
Yes.
including the new dog park. So are we aiming to get a version when the construction is done in spring? Or are you going to make the construction, put the old dog rules up, and then make a new sign when we formalize this?
I think either way is possible. I'd like to start it, if possible, with the new rules in place would be my ideal. But I realize something like this might need more vetting. I really look to the commission to see what you think, what else should be done, whether they're outreach, whether they're checking.
In my opinion, is that these are mature enough that I would feel comfortable making the sign up tomorrow. I think the second rules are better than the first ones. Just they have more detail. I do have one nitpick. On the very first one, on the top of the page, I think you can make it more pithy by striking the designated as such out of there, and then before the dog exercise area, say designated dog exercise areas. That might chop a few words out. And also, in that same sentence, it says dogs may be allowed off leash. I would say dogs may be allowed off leash only in the dog exercise area. So it kind of infers that there are other places that they could be. Okay. Any other questions? I think this is a good set of rules. I think we're on the right page. I do want to talk about path forward for dog parks.
Can I ask one quick question,
sure.
Chair? So I can, if the commission would like it, come back next month with an action item to adopt this, if you would like. Is that the...
That's good.
Sound good? Okay.
I'm comfortable with that.
Very good. I'll make it happen.
Funding.
Darren, while they're talking, I assume the plan is that you would have a sign that has all of this on it,
That's correct, and as well as our website.
as opposed to a sign that says, this dog park is under the use of rules such and such and such and such to be found on our website at.
Yeah, we'll list them out.
So you're going to put them out there?
Yeah.
So as you mentioned, this is first dog park in 25 years. So a lot of people have questions, I think, about path forward and what. I'll let Ann have the first chomp at it.
Thank you, I appreciate that. So in the community meetings and in the past discussions, we've had talking about the current dog parks that exist and what the plans are for those dog parks and how they're going to get upgraded. And so my question is going to be when and what is the plan for the 3 dog parks that we have right now? So that's my first question. Second is on the list of future locations that we have in the master plan. Is there any way to tell how soon we'd be able to really activate any of those and what the choices will be? because there certainly is a process to go through. And in that particular vein, we talked a lot about the potential site right across from the California Avenue Railroad Station as a potential place, but there seems to be the public art there that seems to have some sort of an issue. And we wanted to understand, I think, on the commission what that was, because it seems like with being by the train station, that's another logical place for a dog park. And then the same thing with the study that we were going to find about the dogs and oak trees not being compatible. So I know that's a lot to respond to, and I don't expect you to respond right now. I just want to enjoy this particular dog park, but I also would not like to wait 25 years, and I'm sure that you guys wouldn't either.
Yeah.
So
Amen.
Thank you
for
very
that.
much.
You
That's
bet.
it, Keith.
For the remodel costs, they'd be paid for CIPs. What would be the minimum cost for if you wanted to remodel or rehab some of these dog parks that we have right now?
It really depends on the scope. If we start entertaining options like synthetic turf, it would be significantly higher than anything we have in our operating budget. It would certainly be a CIP. If we're talking about something more along the lines of adding a fence and maybe some trees and maybe a shade structure, I think that's different. We could make that happen in certain areas like Mitchell. I think Mitchell really calls for a more robust rehab that would probably need that CIP funding. So it's a question, what I recommend is that we get together with the ad hoc and probably the commission and come up with a recommendation on, we'll have $150,000 in FY19 for another dog park if everything gets approved, but that's what's in current plan now. So that'd be the second option, and that could be
$150,000?
$150,000.
For another dog park, or?
Well, yes, it could be a new dog park, or it could be
Or we could take
renovating.
that 150 and put it,
That's correct, because
Okay.
we had all three of our existings call out for improvement of some kind. Greer, which is woefully undersized, we looked at a repositioning within that park, significantly larger. Same thing with Hoover, that one's too small. We could do, in the interim, other improvements. That Hoover fence is way too low. I've heard that from countless park users. I don't know why they put it in so low. That could be remedied. It is popular, it's just so small that they need to use the entire outfield to meet the dog park needs of that area.
so I think it would be fun for the ad hoc to look at that, but I'd also like to look at it as a test case for any potential community fundraising. When we were at the community meetings last winter, I was very impressed that the dog supporters were very interested in helping to support the dog parks, and so if there were specific things, maybe this would be a way to test that.
I think that's something that the ad hoc should talk to Howard or other dog users and see what do they want, and what would they be willing to pay for. That'd be a good ad hoc.
You up for that?
David?
More specifically, if we could do 2 parks in the time frame that it would normally be to do 1 park because of funding, maybe we could help to limit the amount that it costs from the CIP with some outside fundraising. So make those dollars, stretch those dollars.
Yes.
I just have one comment as I was thinking about what, one of the rules about the dog walkers and what David had mentioned about the dog walkers. And that is, I'm not very familiar with the process of the dog walkers in terms of their commercial activity and how often they're using the dog parks currently. But as we build other dog parks or we make these rules that pushes them out, to think about what might the unintended consequences be in terms of what other areas become impacted. Does that mean they're going to other parks and letting their dogs, roam around other parks or going to other areas, but just to perhaps think about if they're not allowed in the dog parks, which seems like a reasonable rule, where do those dogs then go, or who is then policing that different activity as they take those dogs someplace else, which they probably will.
That's a good question.
Yeah, I think that's a fair point. My understanding, and Darren, correct me if I'm wrong about this, but that our neighboring communities have a limit on the number of dogs that can be brought to a park. And so I think that currently, commercial dog walkers who are picking up dogs in Mountain View are bringing them to Palo Alto because we don't have that rule. I know that there are a number of commercial dog walkers that take dogs to the beach, right? So they go to Santa Cruz or they go to Fort Funston or somewhere else. And they don't have a restriction there. And I think that's a pretty popular thing for a lot of commercial dog walkers. But at the moment, I think it is important to recognize that Palo Alto is probably the place where a lot of them are landing because it's close and they can't walk dogs in Mountain View or Menlo Park or somewhere else with more than 3 per person.
That's right.
Just one quick question. A number of cities have implemented different versions of what you would call a pop-up dog park. So they're not permanent, they're in place, and I wondered if the committee had considered that as one way to do something quickly in more places with restrictions as to the size of the dog, the number of times, the number of days a week or days a month or whatever it is you do, but that would be a way to, if not build something specific, at least spread it out geographically or something.
That was something we had looked at fairly intensely during the shared use exploration. So we had, this was mainly in baseball, softball, partially fenced off areas where we said, hey, can we use this for a dog park 1 or 2 days a week or more? And unfortunately, we didn't have a lot of success there, but it doesn't mean we couldn't look elsewhere for other opportunities.
That was my reasoning for allowing them to pay for exclusive use of an existing park, because I'm willing to bet that there are some quiet hours where there are fewer dogs, many fewer dogs, and I don't know what day of the week and I don't know what hour of the day, but 1 in the afternoon on a Wednesday afternoon, that could be your pop-up. Is one of the existing parks is a pop-up for commercial users for an hour or for 2 hours, and then they're out of there for the rest of the week. Just something to consider.
Sure. I would just, one thing that's ruminating in my head from all the outreach is, as we looked at that shared use model for over a year, the outcome of that in numerous public meetings with hundreds of people was, we want dedicated dog parks. It doesn't mean that this couldn't be popular with some, but I got shouted down with that shared use idea. It just did not fly, for what it's worth.
Yeah, what I meant is that those dog walkers are walking Palo Alto dogs for Palo Alto dog owners, not that they're bringing dogs from Cupertino over here. So you are using those parks to exercise Palo Alto dogs. And so in that respect, it is a dedicated dog park for our use.
Can you even rent out the area or charge people to bring it in if it's a dedicated park? Is that allowed?
Much like a picnic area, I suppose it would be, yeah.
Oh, okay. I guess it's, okay.
Yeah, it would be a challenge, and my hunch is it wouldn't be very popular with our regular dog walkers that aren't commercial, but we could certainly look into it.
Yeah, I'm nervous just because we're so short of dog parks. The optics of it may be bad, but we can investigate. One question, you said the 150K was in fiscal year 19?
Yes.
And so that starts July 1st, 19?
Yes.
Okay. Great. So that means that...
Actually, let me double check that. I'll get back to you on that one,
okay.
confirming that funding year.
Okay, so that would be, if it'd be July 1st, so it's only a year and a half away. So we have some time, but not that much. Okay. If there's no other questions, we'll move on to the next topic. Jasmine is here to talk about aquatics. Perfect timing, Tim just showed up. Welcome.
Yeah, absolutely.
Thank you, Darren.
So our next item is an update on the Rinconada Pool, and specifically Palo Alto Swim and Sport. They have been operating the Rinconada Pool and providing swim lessons since August, and overall, I feel like it's been quite successful. Included in their contract is a requirement to provide a status report to the Parks and Rec Commission in the fall. And so today with us is Jasmine LeBlanc, who is the Senior Manager of our Strategy and Operations group within Community Services, and also Tim Sheeper, who is manages our Palo Alto Swim and Sport operation at Rinconada Pool. So I'll turn it over to Jasmine and Tim.
Thanks so much. This is Jasmine LeBlanc from the Community Services Department. I have a very brief presentation. And is this the clicker? Can I wrap that too? I will get started with it. If I can. Yeah, thank you. All right. So this is essentially a year in review, and as Kristen mentioned, they haven't actually been with us for a full year yet, but we still have some interesting data, so I will jump right in. Beginning on August 14th, Team Sheeper, also known as Palo Alto Swim and Sport, became our aquatics operator, and prior to that, they had overseen our swim lesson program since 2015, and this year we had expanded the program to start in April, and it went from April through October. So right now they are offering swim lessons and overseeing our lap swim program and our contracts with Rinconada Masters and PASA, and also provided summer swim camps this summer. So one of the most notable differences between our old program and our new program is the expanded swim lesson program. And as you can see on this slide, we covered many more months of swim lessons. And we had two different types of swim lessons available. The traditional weekly lessons where a child comes each day of the week for one or many weeks. And also a once-a-week swim lesson that you can take over a longer period of time. We served nearly 10,000 children in 2017, which was a significant increase from previous years. I put that in the memo. I can't recall off the top of my head, but several thousand more students were in our swim program this year than in previous years. And we had a pretty good satisfaction rate with 83% satisfied or extremely satisfied with the program. And as I mentioned, we also had over 100 children participate in swim camps this summer. On the lap and open swim side, we now have 125 monthly swim pass holders, which when you sort of do the math, is a little bit more than we had in heavy 10-pack users. So we're getting some really great consistent users of our lap swim program. We also had an extended open swim season, and Palo Alto Swim and Sport offers a family pass that people can come up to the pool and buy. And we had more than 400 families participating and purchasing that during our extended period, as well as some others during the month of August, many more in August. And then on top of that, we've had about 3,000 additional participants in lap and open swim since they began operating that program, which is up from what it was the previous year. And we were really pleased to see 95% satisfied or extremely satisfied with the lap and open swim program for the people who did respond to the survey. And we have been able to do this without a change in our schedule for PASA or Rinconada Masters. So that concludes my presentation. If you have any questions for myself or for Tim, we're happy to take them.
Okay, thank you. We have no public comments. We'll start in. Ryan, do you want to start?
Yeah, just at the outset, let me note, and I think that this year is unique, right, because you only began the contract with Palo Alto Swim and Sport in August. But I think that for next year, something that would be very helpful from my perspective is to see year-over-year comparisons, and it needs to start with before Palo Alto Swim and Sport was running the pool. So keep that in mind, I think, for future reports. Certainly, I think that this is a lot of good news, but I don't have a lot of context in some respects to understand a lot of these numbers. So then let me ask, with respect to the swim lesson program, there were 17% of folks who I guess filled out surveys saying that they were not satisfied. What are the big categories that are driving that? Are there particular reasons, and are there things being done to improve?
It was the basic registration, the start of the registration, because we did the resident verification, so it was a complex process that they had to go through to verify that they're residents to get the subsidy. And that was a majority of it as we were trying to navigate that and figure that out early on. That was the most dissatisfaction that we came across.
And in terms of comparisons with our previous summers, it's pretty similar to what we've had in previous years, and we can incorporate that in our report next year that kind of shows some trends over time.
Is that verification a one-time process? And so now they're in your system and they can just register easily next time, or they have to go through the same thing?
Yes, it was, they're in the system and they're continuing to register. Well, once they're registered, they don't have to continue to register. All they have to do is tell us when they're out.
But if they, let's say, went to a summer session for a week and did lessons, now if they come back next year and want to do another week, do they have to prove that they're still a resident?
No.
Okay.
Yeah, it's a one shot.
Okay.
They're in.
When we started this, the really good reasons for having a contract with Palo Alto was to extend the pool hours and to make sure we had adequate lifeguards going all year round. So I think in that respect, this has been very successful, so I'm happy to see that. So very good job, on the work that you've done taking over, Tim. I think it's not a lot of moving parts and a lot of things that all the staff had to kind of work together and solve. So I do have some questions. Am I reading this right, that about 85% of people taking lessons on are Palo Alto residents? I know, but I want to make sure, I see that, but I want to make sure I'm understanding it, David.
What page? Oh, just on this one? Where is it? Yeah, on the weeklies, yes. Yeah, 91%.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, you're mostly getting residents. And then 99 on the weekly privates, and where? Overall, yeah, overall, it is.
Okay,
yes,
great.
correct,
I just want to
yes.
make sure that I was clear on that. And then the lifeguards, can you talk anecdotally about, are you having trouble getting lifeguards, or is it, an ongoing process? And are a lot of the lifeguards coming from Palo Alto, or no?
We have our leadership team is some staff members that we've had at Menlo who've moved over to Palo Alto and have become the leadership team. And then we've have about 6 to 8 members who are previous Palo Alto lifeguards who are on staff, mostly doing weekends and some night after school works, but mostly minors, 16 to 18-year-olds.
And how many lifeguards do you have altogether?
We probably have about 12 to 15 lifeguards. Yeah.
So the reason I'm asking is that being a lifeguard at a local swimming pool, as everybody knows, is like a really fun job for local kids and always a really important part of kids' lives. And I just want to make sure that Palo Alto kids have the opportunity, if they want to pursue that, to have a position, and you'd probably love to have them, right?
Yeah, the opportunity's always there. Yeah, we're always hiring, absolutely.
Okay, so the next question is, or the comment, could you talk a little bit about your relationship with PASA and Rinconada Masters, please, and how it's going? Because I know that those contracts were signed a little bit later, and there probably hasn't been enough time to work out through any potential rough spots from your perspective. How's it going?
I don't think there's any rough spots. I think it's just like any new relationship. They're getting used to this new management team, which is me and my staff that's on the ground there at the pool. I have a long history with Tony, 20 plus years, so we communicate frequently on things and issues like the closures for the air quality for the fires. So we had to text back and forth because those decisions had to be made quick, and that affected the community and affected his swimmers. So we came to an understanding of how we could communicate quickly and get things done. With Rinconada, the Masters, they've been here 40 plus years, so they have a certain way of conducting their team and conducting their operations. And so we're really new to the game, and so it's mostly us getting used to them and what their needs are, and then trying to weave in so that we can support them and help them really flourish as a team.
So this report said that no change in the schedule for either PASA or Rinconada Masters. That's pretty great that you were able to achieve that.
Yeah, I think that was going in. We want to come in and build aquatics in Palo Alto. We don't want to upset aquatics in Palo Alto. That was never our intent. So I think first we have to stabilize what we have and then build upon that. Once we've built up the trust, right? They have to really trust what we're doing and really feel that we're authentic, and we want to really make aquatics very strong in Palo Alto, all around, just not one facet of it. So from lessons to youth team to masters to water exercise, et cetera, et cetera. Yeah.
Okay, I think this is the last question, and that is, there's always a lot of maintenance around a pool that needs to be done, and if I remember right, there's usually maintenance at Rinconada that has to be done, and so that's a public works function. How is that going? How is that communication going?
Again, that's another new relationship as well. So Public Works never had to deal with an outside group, and we're fortunate enough that we have a long history in operating pools, so we have a good understanding of the mechanical workings of it, the hydrodynamics of it, and we know when to reach out to them and what to tell them to help them come to action when needed. Pools are, big, complex systems, and so they have to be monitored daily, 24/7. The guys on the public works, they have a big job. They're called. They have most of their systems are on alarms, and they're connected to their mobile devices. So when the systems go out of their parameters, they're notified 24/7, and so they know what's happening. And so it's usually us reiterating the fact that, hey, the heat needs to be adjusted, or the chemistry needs to be adjusted, and they're always yes, we know, they're right there. So we're just another outside source that is kind of adding to the mixture in the relationship, and now it's only been three and a half months, and so that is still developing. And we've had, with the help of staff, we've had a couple meetings with them to kind of sort out how we deal with bigger issues once they start to happen, because we haven't experienced a full summer, and that's when we have the most impact on the pool. And that's when we're going to really have to make sure that the pools are in the parameters that we need for safety.
Well, just to say that Rinconada is a terrific resource for the community. Everybody loves it. I'm glad to see it being used, and I'm glad we have lifeguards, so we don't have to put the sign on the pool that says we're closed. So thank you very much for all the answers to the questions, too.
Oh,
appreciate it.
You're quite welcome, yes.
I want to follow up on the maintenance issue. So, for example, every day they check the chlorine to make sure that's okay. The person who did that a year ago, are they the same person that's doing it now, or was there a switch over in the responsibilities of the...
No, it's the same person.
Same person.
I think what we've added is, they have full-time staff that take care of that and spend hours at the pool daily.
Okay.
What we do is we do spot checks. So when we open the pool and we're letting our programs in, we check the pool to make sure that it's within code to open it. It has the right chlorine balance, and it has the right pH balance, and the temperature's on. So we make those 3 basic checks, and a majority of the time it's spot on. When it's off, it's usually we have to either make the call or add something. But it's very, very...
Do you have the ability to modify the chemistry yourself?
No.
Okay.
No.
They have to come in?
Yes, just in the account, if there's we're working on this, and if there's a accidental fecal accident, right? And then there's certain protocols that we have to follow by county code to make sure that we can continue operating the pool once there's a short closure period. And
Okay.
so we want to be able to do that, and Public Works is in agreement with us that it's a simple process that we can follow. So we're working through that. And that's going to happen, and it's going to happen on a weekly basis during the summertime.
But when there's been issues and you contact Public Works, have they been responsive?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, they hear about us. They hear from us quite often, right? It's pools are like boats. They just need constant attention. Yeah.
Okay, thank you, David.
I have just a couple quick ones. The lap swimmers, I thought that there were only like 70, and now there's 150. That's a huge jump in lap swimmers and adult swim. Isn't that the case?
Are you referring to kind of our regulars who are
Yeah.
coming into the pool?
Yeah.
It sort of depends on how you tease out who's a regular. So before I put together the cover memo for this, I went back and took a look at our 2016 data for people who came in with a 10-pack, I think 6 or more times a month, to try to figure out, okay, would those be our likely monthly pass holders if we had offered it under our operations? And when I did that, it was around 100, 110, depending on the month. So it wasn't as low as 70, but certainly is higher with Palo Alto at Swim and Sport.
Yeah, 150 is
Yeah.
great. The second question I had is that for the swim school, are you at the max now? Because I noticed that the volumes, well, at the most, you had 860 lessons in August and 720 in September and 660 in October for residents. And I noticed that as the season went on, the non-resident percentage went up. And I think it was maybe because of the startup issues, but I don't know for sure. But do you see that trend continuing? How many more are you going to be able to get above and beyond 860 lessons? And will they be non-residents or residents?
They're going to mostly be residents. That's what we see is using the rink and not a pool. Mostly residents. And yes, there's room for plenty more lessons. We're nowhere near capacity.
Have you been successful in, if the demand is really high in August, have you been successful in getting people to come in September and October instead of everybody piling on in August?
Well, they're mostly going to pile on in the summertime, right? Because it's the nicest time to learn how to swim. It's warm and people have the time, so they're going to come during those 8 weeks to 10 weeks when school's not in. And the intent is to build a year-round or mostly a year-round school, so starting all the way in the beginning of spring and running through the end of fall. So you think of daylight hours, right, and run a school for that period of time. And then it'll just be, it'll swell during the summer months.
Right. I guess my question was, how do you increase the number on the fringes, September and April, September and May, and then November? How will that happen?
That's going to happen over time. Once people know that we're here, they know the quality that we can deliver to them and the services that are there. It's just going to take some time, some outreach, and mostly through with swim lessons, it's going to be word of mouth, and it's with all the marketing or advertising we do, and the information that we get back through our surveys, it's mostly word of mouth. So it's going to be, yeah.
And I suspect that next year in October and November, if the weather is anything like this year, you're going to get a higher volume. But if it goes back to normal, will weather play a role in how many people show up in October and November?
Not really. I mean, the number of people that we had at the end of summer, so it was mid-August, to the numbers that we had on October 29th, the end of our season, was about the same. It really didn't fluctuate. People get in a rhythm, and if they get a good connection with their instructor and the child is making progress, the parent will continually they'll come. It's a service that they
even if it's cold, even if it's seasonally cold.
Right.
Okay. And then I had what about Terman and JLS pools? You couldn't use them this year. Are you intending to expand to those pools in the future? Again?
It's something that we want to keep on the table, but we need to have another discussion. So we have a kind of regular big meetings quarterly. Our next one is going to be in January, and that's when we would want to discuss with Tim if that's something he would want to take on, and then if so, we need to start figuring out what we might ask for in terms of schedule, location, etc., to see if we can make it all work out.
Okay. And my last question is that my neighborhood pool is the Green Meadow Pool, and it's closed for a year, maybe more. And so they had lots of lessons, and they had lots of adult swimmers, and they had lots of swim team swimmers. Now, I think some of that's going to go to the Eichler Pool, I think, but I'm wondering how much of that is going to you. You haven't heard anything about that, or?
This is the first I'm hearing of it, so.
Okay. Okay.
Maybe it's an opportunity.
Yeah, there's
for the Rink
there's
Meadow
a Green
Pool, yeah.
Meadow, bulletin and all that kind of stuff, community. Anyway, that's all I had.
In terms of the revenue and number of lessons and people that came through, and I know it was going to be hard to project for you, but where does it fall with your expectations of what you thought the first summer would look like?
About the number of lessons
And
coming
as well as
through,
the revenue.
attached to the revenue. Moderate. I thought we were going to do better. I'm an eternal optimist, so I thought there was going to be more people coming through. But I do know that it does take time for people to adopt the new service, and they have to find out, is it worthy of them spending the time and the energy and the resources to come into the program.
And then now that winter is approaching, and I take it we're stopping lessons, that's correct, at
Correct.
Rinconada. What's the role now for you with the pool? It's to oversee PASA and the Masters and the pool in general, or is there other opportunities for you during the winter months with the pool?
Right now, we are just doing the overseeing PASA, Rinconada Masters, and lap swim. And we are beginning our planning for 2018, and hoping to start some new programs in the springtime. Yeah, it really doesn't make that much sense to start them January, February, March. It's hard to get any traction, so we kind of have to pause and wait until we get some warmth.
Okay, thanks.
Yes.
Most of my questions have already been asked by other commissioners. I do support the Ryan's comment about the value of year-over-year comparisons. That's highly desirable. On that, related to that, regarding the youth lifeguard hires, do we have a number of how many youth Palo Alto youth were hired this summer versus the previous summer?
In terms of the program before August, before Team Sheeper began operating, or after?
Sure.
So before, I think it was mostly Palo Alto youth, and there were approximately 50 employees on staff, kind of as seasonal hires.
I'm sorry, that was 50 or 15?
50,
50.
50, yeah, because summer is such a big time. They came in when we shifted into our fall schedule, and their first day was the first day of school here in Palo Alto. So they have a much smaller staff because of that, but they'll ramp up in the summer. So we did really push the opportunity to all of the Palo Alto the employees that were there during the summer. Tim and his staff came to many of their weekly staff meetings to promote. They did on-site interviews, really tried to make sure that anyone who was interested knew that they had the opportunity, and made it as easy as possible to partake in that. But as we noticed in the past, most of our employees weren't really interested in participating in and working during the school year.
Sure.
So they encountered the same problem that we encountered in terms of keeping on local Palo Alto teenagers for their kind of school year time period.
So I think the answer is for a true apples-to-apples comparison, we need to wait till next September and count the numbers then.
I think so.
It looks like the ratio of group to private lessons is roughly 80-20. Has that changed over time, and is that what we were seeing in 2016 as well?
That's my recollection, and I do apologize for not having hard statistics, but I can tell you that we haven't wanted to offer tons of private lessons in the past because we're only serving one resident as opposed to 4 in a group lesson. So, but they are popular and usually kind of sell out in their availability.
That's really the gist of my question. Is the number of private lessons roughly consistent with what it has been relative to the number of hours available for lessons?
When you say sell out, that means that you run out of instructors, or you run out of lanes? What's the limiting factor?
Instructors.
Same story.
Yes.
And final question regarding the overall impact to the city financially. Are we where we expected to be? Is this more expensive or less expensive for the city?
So this year we did have the capacity to offer about 18,000 lessons, and that was the most costly part of this program. So in terms of the cost to the city, it actually is a little bit less than expected for this year. However, we do want to see more participants, so I hope that we get up higher next year. And as you all may recall, we don't have a subsidy built in to next year's program. We negotiated to kind of keep the rate pretty similar to what we've been offering for residents without a subsidy. So next year we want to see as many people participating as possible. And I anticipate that if we, kind of stay on track with where we are, we'll be probably a little bit below what I would have told you guys about 9 months ago in terms of revenue, but not hugely below that.
And can you refresh my memory, please? So there were subsidies offered this year. Are there subsidies not being offered next year, so the rates will be increased next year?
So the rates may go up a little bit. We have to negotiate that with Tim, but we did negotiate so that our subsidized rate, I think it was $16 for a group lesson, would remain 16 or perhaps 16 plus, $17, something like that, and not just kind of jump up to our full cost of $20 a lesson. I see puzzled looks, I'm sorry.
So does that mean the city will continue to pay subsidies next year?
No. We negotiated with Tim that he would offer the lesson at $16 or possibly $17 without a subsidy. So he is going to be earning less on each of those lessons, but he also is operating the full program, and hopefully we'll be able to grow the program. So it made sense to him and to the city.
Thank you for the clarification.
I think there's been an awful lot of talk about the data and comparing year to year. Jasmine, I want to compliment you on your facility with the numbers, and I'm really pleased with that. I'd like to encourage both you and Team Sheeper to be more curious about the numbers and analyze them, and I think you can do that. And also more specific, my only disappointment in this whole thing was you said several hundred more people dropped into the pool over and above last year. And if several hundred's 200, then that's 10 or 12%. And if several hundreds is 400, that's 35 or 40%. And that the difference between those two is big in terms of, is it really successful or is it marginally successful? But I want to compliment you and encourage you and to anticipate what kind of numbers, not just.
Thank you. I really appreciate how astute this commission is. I had hoped I could sneak that by because, just to be frank, because we didn't offer a family entrance fee in the past, and the family could be 2, 3, 4, or 5 people coming in at once. We always had each individual pay for themselves. So I didn't want to give a hard number because we don't know precisely how many people actually entered the pool when he is selling family tickets. So I made a estimate.
And being curious means thinking ahead of time about what this curious body might ask you, and therefore not ending up a year from now saying, oh, we forgot to collect that piece of data.
Right, right. I want to say that when I made the assumption that the average family entering was 4 people, then it was 800, approximately 800 more coming in.
Thank you.
Just following up, so would it be possible to track the number of people that actually enter the pool? So when someone comes in on a family pass, we do a count and a separate count for each person?
Yes, we are doing that. I think the point is that we offered a new way to enter the pool that they didn't have last year. So, you know, our philosophy was to bring families in, to give them a low rate, to bring the whole family in. And before it was just individual passes. So next year is going to be all new data as well, because there's nothing to compare that to. But we do track all.
So if a family comes in, they have a card and they scan it, and then you let the whole family in. Do you count how many people are in the card, or you just let the whole family go in?
Well, the people who are coming in for the open swim it's usually cash payment. It's a one-time, and it's a whole family coming in, and we count, and then it's $15.
And then do you remember?
It could be 3 people, it could be 4, it could be 5 people.
But do you count that down, or do you just count them at the time and then let them go, but you don't record?
Well, no, then we key it into our system that says family pass.
Okay.
Or family entrance, so we know how many have come in.
So we should have Don's numbers. It's just we haven't.
So I think what they're asking is, if a family of 3 comes in, do you mark that it was 3 people?
Oh, no.
Instead of?
Okay.
No.
So that's what I was asking. That's what I was asking if we could count.
Okay, excuse me, yes.
Okay.
So can we count that?
I think in terms of the pricing, where it would make sense for people to choose the family pass, it's going to be most likely 4 or 5 people, so we could sort of make some assumptions, and that's probably the right way to do it in the future.
It'd be nice to know, but I don't think I want to waste labor on that, so.
Thank you.
Is that it? Back to the fecal incident. We have the 2 pools. Do they have common filtration? So if one...
No, they're separate.
Separate. So if there's a fecal incident on one, you can hop in the other.
Correct.
And how long is that outage usually? Is it...
It depends on what style.
Okay.
It could be 30 minutes, or it could be up to over 20 hours.
Oh, okay. And that's if the action starts right now, it might be 30 minutes.
Yeah,
20 minutes.
we have a protocol, and the guards know how to act, or how to react, and it's usually, right on 30 minutes.
Okay. And then but right now you have to call Public Works, and then they have to come over and do something.
No, we're working through that, so that's
not going to be an issue.
We can handle it on site and take care of it, and just record it, and do the chemistry, which is adding chlorine.
Okay. And now for open swim, how often are we at capacity at the pool? Or is it always?
Well, we started on the 14th of August, so at the end of summer, and we reach, and that was at the end of summer, so we reached capacity quite quickly.
Okay.
it was a new thing to us. So people will line up anywhere from 30 to 60 minutes ahead of time and just sit on their coolers and hang out and wait so that they can get their spot. And then once they're in the pool, they'll stay for the entire time. Yeah.
So you keep a count then, and then you just say no one enters, and then...
Right, so it's one guard can guard 25 participants, and so we would put 5 to 6 guards on the play pool, and then we'd also open up the some sections of the performance pool and put people there. And usually we'd have about 11 to 12 guards on the pools, and we would reach capacity. And it's weather dependent. Well, it's not necessarily, for us it wasn't necessarily weather dependent because it could be warm, but after a certain time and as soon as we hit after Labor Day, it was still warm, but the usage dropped pretty dramatically. People just moved on to other things.
Okay. We talked about the junior high pools. Jordan, last year, we did not use them. That was because we didn't get enough registrations?
That's right.
So this year, when we decide whether we want one of these pools, or we're going to wait till after registration and then look at the demand, or how are we going to work that? When does that decision have to be made?
Yeah, I think we need to make that decision before Tim's group starts to really ramp up and start to try to promote their swim lessons. And we probably wouldn't want to wait until after people register because, you know, they won't know necessarily they could register. We might want to do something similar where we try to negotiate and get the pool, make sure it's available, and then see what kind of demand there is, and we could, you know, see if we could potentially drop lanes or drop times if we don't get the demand.
Okay. And how do we choose between Jordan and JLS and Terman?
So,
Sure. So I think one of the reasons last year why enrollment in the satellite pool was low is that it's typically at JLS, which is further from Rinconada, but with Jordan being just down the road from Rinconada, it may not have made sense for people to go there as opposed to just go to Rinconada. Typically, JLS is the pool that's offered to us from the school district, so that would be the one that we would likely go to. It wasn't available last year because of maintenance, which they ended up not doing. Oh, no. And the pool did become available to us, but by then it was so close to summer starting that we just didn't, you know, it would have been difficult to shift all of the communication to the public that it was back at JLS. So if we do decide to do a satellite pool, ideally I think it's most successful if it's in another location in South Palo Alto, so people have the option to go somewhere that's close to them. Okay. So I think, like Jasmine said, we'll assess that next year. We'll see which pools are available and if it's something that we want to pursue.
Go ahead.
Just one thing on that. So the Green Meadow pool is closed because they're rebuilding it after 30 years. And that's the closest one. That's about 3 blocks from JLS. So I would encourage you to reach out to that community and see what you can do for their lessons.
I think Green Meadow is supposed to open in May, so we'll find out. Anyway, we can cross that bridge when we get to it. Last question for Tim. What can we do for you? You have this new home now. You're taking control of the pool. Are there things about the pool that you don't like? The pool complex, not necessarily the pool itself. How are the locker rooms? How are the meeting rooms? The other parts of the facility? Does it meet all your needs?
The pool is in an idyllic setting. It's surrounded by a beautiful park and trees, and it has this iconic past. with lap swimmers and the master swimmers, and a very powerful, national youth swim team there. So I think the way that the commission could support that pool is to learn how it's used. I mean, I've been around this area for a long time, and when I started operating it, I was very surprised of how it was actually used, because I had my assumptions, but then when I was actually there on the ground and guarding, I was surprised of who actually comes to lap swimming, who actually comes to open swimming, and who comes. So it was completely different than when I thought it would be. So I think it's good for the commission to, on a weekend day in the summer, to see who is coming to the pool, if you haven't already, because it was surprising to me. So with that, then you'd have a real clear picture of what we're dealing with. And the pool is old, but it's been refurbished, recycled, and it's a sturdy. So it's going to last us a long time. And we've been talking about minor upgrades, and just to bring in a little bit more pizzazz and pop to the play pool, and maybe clean a little thing here, polish a little thing there, and that's something that we want to get to, because it's been run one way for a very, very long time, and so as a new operator coming in, I'm real sensitive to that. So my goal is not to do anything too fast, and is just to slowly make an impact, but impact slowly. I think that's going to be the way that we're most accepted from this community.
Okay. Good.
One quick question. A long time ago, about a year ago, we talked about making the pool longer, 25 meters or 25 meter pool or 25 yards, extending it. So those plans are not, you're good for 10 years. Is that right?
In this area, if you build a bigger pool, it will fill up. If in this area, if you build, they will come. Yeah. So it's just a matter of what the city wants to get into.
I mean, if we had a bigger pool or a second pool, do we have the lifeguard capability? It seems like that's a limitation.
That is a challenge, yes. But one of the challenge that's attached to that right now that we're experiencing is that the pool is open for a certain amount of time, and then it's closed. And this is all in the same day. So it's open, it's closed, it's open, and it's closed. So there's 3 lifeguard shifts that have to be filled instead of 1 or 2 8-hour shifts, so people can work a full day and get paid their 8 hours. So we're dealing with that, and if it was, as the model changes, it's much more likely to get more full-time staff who are committed to an aquatics career.
Okay. Any other? Ryan.
So reviewing this in advance, the report in advance of the meeting, I thought it reflected all very kind of positive and good news. Through tonight's discussion, it seems as though in a couple of areas we're actually coming in lower, for example, on the revenue share component of it. Is that right? We're below where we expected to be?
Yes, because we didn't have as many lessons as we had hoped we would have, and camps. So in addition to what Tim mentioned for the registration process being somewhat onerous and people not liking that, we've worked with his staff to try to smooth the resident registration process, so new people who want to come to the pool don't face the same challenges that some of the first program participants faced. And we also had far fewer summer camp participants than we anticipated, and we have talked a lot about what we can do there. I think that it was not it wasn't in the Enjoy catalog with all the other camps that the city offers. It was in there, but sort of in the back, far behind the rest of the city camps. So people, from my experience as a parent who signs up for camps, a lot of other people didn't even realize we had swim camps available this summer. So we're trying to make some tweaks to just get people to know that we're offering these programs. So I think we, city staff and Tim's staff, feel confident that we can grow the program to what we had expected, but it didn't hit the numbers this year.
Okay. So I completely agree with Dawn's comment that your facility with the numbers is excellent. I think that something that would be helpful from my perspective, and appreciating that this is a report prepared by Team Sheeper, and Team Sheeper obviously wants to put his best foot forward, totally understandable. But I don't know if it's an interim report before next fall, or whenever you think the next period when you actually have kind of a good comparison year over year, but I think it would be good to have a robust report from the city that gives us that sort of information.
Yeah, I think we could certainly do that, and maybe it's something that we present in advance of the summer. Some of the issues that we've been trying to work through with Tim and what we anticipate we might see over the summer. As Tim mentioned, we do have some facility enhancements that we hope we can find some funding for this year. For example, the water features that are in the play pool, we'd like to be able to fix. We have some broken features, and the slide is on its last legs, for example. So there's lots going on with the pool.
Yeah, let me also just add that I think that it's kind of the universal sentiment that things are going well.
Yeah.
It just would be great to, have the solid numbers to kind of digest in a way. All right, enough from me on that.
Thank you, Tim. Thank you, Jasmine. We appreciate it.
Could I add just some final comments?
Sure.
I think first, if there are specific data points that haven't been brought up tonight that you would like us to look at or report on, if you could let me or Jasmine know, just so that we're providing the information that you're really interested in. And second, I just wanted to mention or point out that I think Team Sheeper has done a really good job of just communicating. It's been, it's new for everyone to have them there. It's new for us, it's new for masters, for the parents who are taking their kids to swim lessons, and we're all getting used to it and we're getting to know each other, but they have done an excellent job of communicating and being willing to communicate and work through little hiccups. An example is our facilities department, who has been, responsible for maintaining the pool. Well, how now does Tim and his group fit in, and how can they work together to make it most efficient as possible? That we get everyone at the table and we talk through those and we say, okay, you'll do this, and we'll follow up and make sure it's working okay. And I think the city staff as well as Tim's staff has just been really great at that. So I think we'll continue to do that, and we'll make some changes, like Jasmine said, about putting the swim camps with the rest of the camps in the Enjoy catalog to get the word out. And I just think also word of mouth is really going to help. Once people know, wow, my kids can take swim lessons in the spring and through the fall, those enrollment numbers will continue to increase. So I think we're really hopeful that we're headed in the right direction.
I want to make one comment, and that is that the way you handled the negotiations with PASA and the adult swimmers and the
Rincon Masters.
the master swim is just fantastic. I mean, it really is a model, and I hope that they use it for the tennis players and the pickleballers and things like that. So, and now to hear about your negotiations with the facilities people, that's even above and beyond. So it's really wonderful to see.
Thanks. What is the duration of the PASA and the Masters contracts that we signed? How long is it? Is it a year or 2 years? How long?
To the end of 18.
End of 18, okay.
We will be issuing a new RFP in the spring. So that's another, because this expires the December 31st, 2018. So we could definitely use more insight from this commission if there are data points or other, things that you would like us to look at in preparation for that as well.
But then once that's awarded, then we have to negotiate with PASA and Masters again.
Yes, or as in, ideally, I think we would negotiate with them during that process and not wait until after we have made an award.
Okay. Okay, thank you. We'll move on. The next item is youth and teen programs. Adam Howard is here.
Thank you.
So this item is one that was requested by the commission just to come back and give an update on our youth and teen programs that we offer the community. And so I asked Tyler Stetson, who some of you may know as being previously in our aquatics program, is now our coordinator of our youth and teen programs out of Mitchell Park Community Center. So I've asked Tyler to come and give a presentation and update on our youth and teen programs, and alongside him is Adam Howard, who manages the Mitchell Park Community Center and lots of other things that go on there. So I'll turn it over to Tyler.
Thank you, Kristen, and thank you to the Commission for giving us the opportunity to meet with you tonight to talk about our youth and teen programs. First, to give you just a background about the teen programs, City Palo Alto recognizes the importance of creating a positive and safe environment where teens can develop life skills and grow as individuals. The Community Services Department offers several programs focusing on developing the spirit, mind, and body, stimulating creativity, offering challenges, and building developmental assets. First, I'd like to talk about our teen leadership groups. With the teen leadership groups, we have several within the City of Palo Alto. Each teen leadership group, they focus on empowering teens by providing them the tools, resources, and support to take lead in meeting teen needs within the community. Some of the teen leadership groups include the Palo Alto Youth Council, or PAYC, the Teen Advisory Board, which is the one that I personally oversee. There's the Teen Arts Council, or TAC, as well as the Teen Library Advisory Board, TLAB. Within the teen leadership groups, we've been seeing a diverse population amongst teens within Palo Alto. While we do have a primary group of Poly and gun students, we have seen additional involvement from other private schools, including Casalea and Middle College, and that's something that we're definitely eager to continue growing over the years. Next, I'd like to talk about our Teen Center, also known as the Drop, over at the Mitchell Park Center. The Teen Center provides a fun, safe, and engaging space for middle school and high school students in the Palo Alto community. Primarily, it offers after-school programming for middle school students, as well as special events for high school students put on through the various teen leadership groups. Our LEAP, which stands for Learning Enrichment After School Program, this is a middle school focused program, and the goal of LEAP is to ensure that youth are provided a space, resources, support, and opportunities to be empowered and thrive within their schools, homes, and communities. We like to point out some figures for LEAP. Enrollment has seen a 66% increase since last year. In the fall of 2016, we had 105 participants enrolled in the LEAP program. As of fall 2017, we've seen 175 participants enrolled. As I mentioned, LEAP is a drop-in program after school with approximately 35 to 45 participants each day. Program activities are built around participants' interests, and that can include activities of art, music, sports, skill workshops, games, and so on. Next, I'll be discussing our Think Fund program. This is formerly known as the Bryant Street Garage Fund, and is overseen by Jose Perez Sanchez, who works at the Mitchell Park Center. The Think Fund brings mentorship, support, resources, and funding to teen-led ideas. With support from Teen Services throughout the process, Think Fund supports teen ideas from beginning to end. Some of the things that they've supported over the years include documentaries. Last year there were a couple documentaries, including Tug of War and Unmasked documentary. They also support groups such as Project Anybody and Students United Against Cancer. In fiscal year 17, Think Fund funded 20 teen-inspired and led projects totaling $23,000. It served approximately 1,600 teens, and last May we hosted our second annual Think Fund Gala, which honors the accomplishments and awards from those Think-funded programs. Next, we're going to talk about summer camps, and this is an introductory video. Might need to change the sound.
There's so many things about this camp. I think all of the traditions that we have, such as like singing songs on the bus, espionage and capture the flag, the overnights, just like s'mores, camp stories that we've told every year that I've been here, and just like all the memories that I have every summer are pretty cool.
I've met so many people here, even I still talk to today, a few summers ago I made a ton of friends, and now I'm still in touch with them and stuff, and now it's we have a lot of new friendships and stuff.
Some of our most popular camps occur in the Foothills Park. There's 3 different camps. It's Foothills Fun Camp, Foothills Day Camp, and Foothills Adventure Camp. So one of our most popular camps is Day Camp, and what's really cool about Day Camp is that they do a 7-mile hike once a session, and they also do an overnight. So every other Thursday, the kids will actually spend the night in the park under the stars. And it's a really unique experience for the kids because they get to be one with nature.
It was so calm there, and me and my friend kind of got stuck in the plants, but we just pulled ourselves out and kept going.
The Foothills Park, the camps are open to the general public. The park is exclusively for Palo Alto residents.
With our summer camps, we'll start with our Camp Palo Alto for preschoolers. This is for kids aged 3 to 4. Then we have our 3 foothills camps, including Fun Camp, ages 5 to 7, Day Camp, ages 8 to 10, and Adventure Camp, ages 11 to 13. In addition to that, we offer teen camps, and this includes our Teen Week Out, which is for 13 to 17, and we also have our counselor and training program. This past summer, we hired 38 seasonal employees, and that includes 2 of our camp coordinators, 7 of our site directors, 8 of our assistant site directors, and 21 camp counselors. The number of participants for the camps totaled 656, and we brought in revenue of over $280,000. Our Teen Week Out camp, this is a newer camp that was a direct response for the age group, as there was a desire for more opportunities for that age group. And this one, we had 7 sessions throughout the summer. Number of participants was about 56, and some of the camp themes included California beaches, visiting various beaches, as well as hiking trails, amusement parks, aquatic centers, and other outdoor activities.
And that's just 1 week long?
Yes. With our counselor and training program, really we look at this as the future leaders of the program. It's a program that provides opportunities for teens aged 13 to 14 to be part of summer camps and gain valuable work experience. All CIT participants apply to be part of the program and participate at our in-service week, which is the week after the Palo Alto Unified School Districts end their academic year. And this past summer we had 45 CITs. And that is our presentation. If there's any questions.
Don, do you want to start?
So the presentation that we were handed out tonight, I think, is different than the one we got in the mail.
How so?
Well, I think there's some pages missing, or I didn't get it. But either way, I'm really enthusiastic about everything we do with teens, obviously. I think that there needs to be some reference to the teen wellness programs that are, part of the city, and I didn't really see that. The other thing I tried to do was create myself a little table, because each of these individual pages, I had to look at LEAP, and LEAP is for middle school, and it looked to me like I would give LEAP an A+ for what it's doing. And then I looked at Think, and Think was for high school, I think, and the way I interpreted what we were sent, I would say it got a B. And then the way we were presented the data, I don't think the differentiation in the camps was in there. So camps in general sounds like they get an A, but I'm not sure that that's true for all of them. And then the teen CIT program, I got back to giving that a B, and then the Teen Week Out, looking at that, I gave it a C. I have no idea if I'm necessarily particularly right, but there was a lack of sort of organization, of understanding of what it is each of these programs are trying to do, and also what the programs are trying to do in relationship to, for example, the library program, because the library's got teens, and so you've got the drop program, but right beside it you've got the library program, and so I'm enthusiastic about this. I'm not sure that I'm asking a question as opposed to just making an observation, that I'd like to see more clarity in helping us understand what's really going on, and the question that the chair asked a while back is, what can we do to help? I think it's not presented in a way that allows me to say, I know what to go push for here to help. So not a question or comment. Thank you.
Thank you.
Was there anything specific on the areas that got worse grades that made you think that they had lower grades? Or is it just kind of a nebulous feeling?
It was, there's just not enough data. It was a nebulous feeling the way it was presented, and
I think it's a nice overview to give us more information about what's going on without, I think it's more qualitative than quantitative, and I think it's useful in that vein. I do have a question regarding the Mitchell Park Teen Center. Is this available for teens to drop in on every day? Is there a fee associated with this? How does that work? I have looked through the window there when it's been closed and thought, hey, that looks pretty cool in there.
Yeah, good question. So the Teen Center is a drop-in program after school for middle school students, and that's what we call LEAP. It's for, our hours of operation are from Monday through Friday from 3 to 6 with an hour extension on Wednesdays as the schools get out 1 hour earlier. And that's currently our main program for LEAP. We are looking for opportunities to expand programming to high school students. In the past, we've had trouble in terms of getting enough high school students to keep it open after hours for that population, as well as on weekends. And so that's something that we're interested in looking into to expand the program and opportunities.
And is it free for the middle schoolers to drop in?
It is.
Okay, thank you.
Wasn't it closed during the summer?
So yeah, it was closed during the summer. The reason for that, we actually host our pre and post camp during the summer months in that space. And so that's the primary reason for why it's been closed. We do want to look at additional opportunities where if there is big enough interest in having additional programming out of there to look into that. But as of this past summer, that was our home base for our pre and post camp for summer camps.
Because especially for high schoolers, they're so busy during the year, I think get more time during the summer. So that would be a time I think we'd want to look into expanding.
Yeah, appreciate the report. I would be interested in some of the numbers for the teen leadership programs in terms of participation, you know, the Palo Alto Youth Council, et cetera. One question I have is what's your method of attracting the participants? Are you guys able to get into schools and provide literature, or is it just through websites or and word of mouth, or is it through advertisement at, you know, postings at the library, or what's the method to reach this audience?
As I'm newer to my position, I'm identifying what methods have been used in the past. To my understanding, for this past academic year, they began recruitment in May by reaching out to the various schools, not only Pali and Gunn, but the additional private schools, including Castellea Middle College, and using various methods, including social media, word of mouth from the current members of the past year, and then also, you know, promoting it through our internal catalog, Enjoy. And in terms of participation numbers, I can speak on PAYC and TAB. For PAYC, we have about 20 members this year, again, ranging, or a mixture of Palo Alto High School, Gunn, and Castellea. And for the Teen Advisory Board, which I oversee, we have 15 members for that.
And as far as LEAP goes, is that something that also is information provided to the elementary schools so that students are able to, and parents, moreover, are able to learn about this?
Regarding it for outgoing elementary school students?
LEAP is for what?
For the middle school
just the middle school, so that would be
Jordan.
6th, 7th, and 8th graders?
Correct.
Okay, got it.
Yeah.
And so then there's literature going to the students or the parents, or?
Correct, to the students, also to the parents. We do notice that a large number of our participants are from JLS Middle School due to its close proximity to the Teen Center. However, we are trying to look at bicycle routes as well as bus transportation for students at Jordan Middle School and Terman to get their participation as well.
Thank you.
I really appreciate what you did with the LEAP program to tell us how many were there in 2016 versus 2017, so we could make a comparison, and that comparison is fantastic, 66% increase. What do you attribute that to? What did you do to make that happen?
In the start of the fall 2016 year, our previous Teen Center director had left the program, and so the oversight of the program, or the ones running it, we were a little bit short-staffed and didn't have as many resources to really promote the program and to ensure that we were promoting it properly and getting the numbers that we needed. At the start of this year, we have our new Teen Center Director, Emily Butterly, and she joined our program back in April. And so throughout the summer and leading up to the fall, she's really been able to help us with advertising it and getting it out to the various schools so that the students and the parents were aware.
That's great. As far as the summer camps are concerned, so it would be nice to see the numbers from 2016 versus 2017 for the next time. But having the summer camp, 656 participants, is that capacity, or could you handle a lot more? What was that like?
We could handle more. One of the challenges that we face is managing our wait lists, because if there's any times where participants have to drop out due to any illnesses or medical leaves, then that does create an opportunity where we can bring in another person. And so I think something that we're really eager to work on for this upcoming summer is tracking those wait lists so that if there are any openings, we can immediately contact the next person on the wait list to let them know and hopefully get their registration for it. So there's definitely an opportunity to grow the program, but we were happy with the numbers that we received from this past summer.
The wait list, is it because you don't have as much staff as you would like?
Unless you want to.
Good evening, Adam Howard, CSD manager. I think it depends on the camp we're talking about. Some of it is transportation, right? We're going up on a bus, so we're capped at 55. We may get more kids there. Other is, yeah, we can only have as many kids as we have staff. So it depends kind of on the situation and the camp. But ultimately, it's just the better we manage that, the more participants. And like I said, some of it is you're on one wait list, we know there's space in another, we got to advertise to those students that there's a different option. Maybe not option A, but there is option B.
Okay. And the staff that you hire, are they local kids mostly?
Yes, high school students as well as college students and the college students, if they're out of state for the school year, they come back in the summertime to work with our camps.
Okay. And then as far as the participants for the Teen Week Out and the CIT program, it's 56 and 45. How are those numbers compared to the past?
We were very happy with those as well, especially for our CIT program. One of the challenges we faced was the Youth and Teens Clerical Assistant overseeing the applications for CIT. They had left us at the end of the spring season, and so that's when we're receiving a large majority of our applications for the program. And so as we transitioned, having someone else take on the CIT program and trying to identify what applications we've received versus any that were missing, there were some that we came across, and luckily we were able to reach out to all interested participants. And with 45 participants, I believe this was one of our higher summers for the CIT program, so we were very happy with that. And then for the Teen Week Out camp, I believe with 56, we were happy with that as well.
That's pretty much capacity because we are driving those participants in our vans. So it's actually a smaller number than we'd like. We'd like to find a way to transport more students, but we're at capacity in that camp.
That's great. Great to know. Thank you.
Yeah, this is great. Thank you very much. I have a couple of questions, and I'd love it if you could provide, and not tonight, but if you could provide the number of teens in Palo Alto and the number of middle schoolers in Palo Alto, just to get a sense of how many people we're serving and maybe what the percentages are. That would be really interesting.
Just to clarify, so how many teens are in Palo Alto,
are in Palo
living
Alto.
or going to school?
Going to school, yeah, here. And just an observation, this is not an easy job dealing with teens and trying to figure out what it is you all want to do next and that kind of thing. So my hat is off to you and the staff and all that, because it's really challenging. Of all the recreation kinds of jobs, I think it's probably the toughest. So could you explain the difference between the Palo Alto Youth Council and the Team Advisory Board?
Sure, I'll let Adam speak on PAYC, but for the Teen Advisory Board, this is really a group of very gifted high school students that come together to put on special events for other teens in the community. Some of the types of events that they put on in the past include movie nights, trivia nights, cupcake wars, and we just had our first event for the year back on November 17th, which I was very excited about, and it was a bath bombs and boba event where they got to make their own bath bombs, and we also brewed our own boba milk tea. And we weren't sure in terms of how many people we could expect for the event, but we had about 50 people in attendance, which we were very excited about. And for it to be our first event of the year, you know, we couldn't start it off any better way. So we're definitely hoping to continue with that momentum and build on it as we get into the new year and expand more offerings for the spring and winter seasons.
And that event was at Mitchell Park? Or
that was, yeah, at the Mitchell Park Teen Center.
Okay.
And then I'll turn it over to Adam about PAYC.
And the Palo Alto Youth Council, again, a group of high school students that look at more either policy issues or issues that directly affect what they feel high school students. So they'll look at things like transportation issues in or around school, have youth forums where they can discuss issues about either school or finals or having a teen dance. I'm just throwing. Yeah. And so really the reason we have two groups is we're trying to fulfill a need. The youth council was getting 20 plus applications every year. We couldn't have them. We created another group, had one go more towards high school activities and one go towards high school policy. So we're attracting two different types or kinds of kids. So we get a little bit different crowd at each event. And it just allows a little bit more students to be involved.
I think that's great. And then could you talk a little bit about the diversity on the youth council and sort of where the kids come from and then the gender balance?
So gender, it's pretty close to 50-50, and it typically is. We don't, that just happens naturally. I mean, we're not looking to do that in any way. We would encourage it, but it just happens pretty naturally. We're heavily between Gunn and Pali, but we do have 4 or 5 Castellea students this year between the two groups, which is better than it has been in years past. And then we range freshmen through seniors, more sophomores and juniors than the lower and upperclassmen, but that's kind of just a natural progression as they go up. Some of them stay and are passionate, and some of them go on to other things.
Okay. And then how does one apply for a grant or a project or submit a project to be considered? How does that happen?
So there's a proposal that you would fill out, and those proposals do ask for budget requests, who your program would be impacting, and a guess of how many high school students you would be impacting directly, who's involved, what help you might need from city staff. And this year we're trying to up this a little bit to get more kids involved. So we're going to hold 3 public meetings for high school students in 3 different locations around the city to give them more information, where we do our best to get on the high school campuses. That's not always the easiest thing to do. But we try to get to their lunchtime activities. We try to do it through word of mouth. And so once a kid provides, or a group of kids provides us with an application, there's a teen services committee that kind of oversees it, asks questions. If there's anything we don't fully understand from their proposals, we get feedback from them, and then we typically approve, unless we feel like it's not going to be something that helps enough Palo Alto high school students.
That's great. That's good. Okay, I think I don't have any more questions right now. Thank you very much.
So let me echo everyone else in applauding you. So this is a helpful overview. I think you've also picked up that this is a metric-hungry group, probably both from the prior presentation to this one. So, you know, any additional metrics you have to provide us, I'm sure that we would love to receive them and have a better understanding, deeper understanding at some level of what's going on. So a moment of levity, what is a bath bomb?
Oh, sorry about that. Bath bomb, if you are taking a bath, they sell them at places like Lush is a store at Sanford Shopping Center that sells them. You drop it into the bath water once it's, you drew your bath, and it expands with different aromas to basically, to make your bath time more enjoyable.
Okay, all right, good to know. You alluded to building out transportation options for middle schoolers. What are your plans in that regard?
So really looking to utilize some of the bike paths. I know that they installed a new one along Ross Road, but also looking at some of the bus transportation options. What's challenging with Terman being further from our teen center is identifying what is the safest route for them to get there, so that parents feel that they can let their teens travel after school to get there. Also for Jordan Middle School, they're not as far away from Sherman, but identifying, they have to cross that busy intersection of Oregon Expressway, and trying to identify, if there are safer routes to get to the teen center, or if we were looking at bus services to see if we can provide specific hours for middle school students, but also identifying time-wise when they get out of school and where the pickup location would be, and how soon we can get them over to our teen center. So it's looking at those bus schedules and bike routes.
And is there anything that this commission could do in order to help bring attention to the issue of, essentially kind of diversifying the middle school program, the LEAP program, by allowing more middle schoolers from Terman and from Jordan middle schools to participate? I mean, is this a budget issue? Is this something else that we could be helpful about?
I think for us, I would say it's just taking the time to do more thorough research for it. Again, because we are newer with our staff for the teen center, specifically our teen center director, we're still trying to get situated and make sure that we're still providing the programs that they've come to expect over the years. But I think as we settle into our positions, it's just going to take more time for us to do that research and figure it out.
Okay. And then on the summer camps and the wait lists, are we talking about dozens of kids on wait lists, or is this a relatively small population, and so we don't feel as though we're not meeting the demand? It's that we're largely meeting the demand, and there's a handful of people who aren't able to participate.
Yeah, for a recreation camp specifically, it is we meet most demand, and we're talking 10 or 12 kids throughout that are on a wait list with 55 on. So, we are meeting most of the demand, but we feel like if we put in the right research and the time, we could get them all off. Again, not maybe plan A, but we want to make sure everyone has an option to go to a summer camp.
Okay, that's all that I have. Thank you again.
So the Think, or the Bryan Street Garage, has mentors. Does the city provide those, or the students have to find them? How do we matchmake that?
Yeah, so the main mentor is Jose Perez, who's the City of Palo Alto staff. He works at Mitchell Park. Okay. And as a team at Mitchell Park, we all mentor as needed.
Okay. And how many kids do the Think? Was it 25? How many proposals did you have last year?
Oh, in terms of how many funded programs?
Yeah.
So for Think Fund, we did fund up to, or there's 20 teen-inspired programs that were funded that totaled 23,000. And in terms of how many teens were served, approximately 1,600.
Is that a budgeted item in the city budget where the money comes from, or does it come from a donor?
It comes from the Bryan Street Garage Fund that I don't even know all the history, but when it was transferred to a garage, money was funneled in for specifically for teen services.
So the 20 teen projects, how do we get to 1,600 teens from 20 projects?
So that was for the various projects that were put on, including the documentaries, Project Anybody, the Students United Against Cancer. Through these various projects, there are teen participation amongst them. If you total up all the teen participation between those 20 funded projects.
They aren't necessarily running the show, but they're doing little bits parts here.
Correct.
So how many kids are on each of these projects typically? When they have a proposal, is it one person that does it, or is it a group of 4 or 5, or?
It can vary, but yeah, I mean, it's usually a group effort, and in terms of how many people, again, it can vary per project, but depending on if it's a more complex project, then they're probably going to have a bigger group, as you said, 4 to 5 people who are working on it.
And so I noticed there's one guy in the picture at the bottom right. Is that a fan? He's the fan man?
Yes.
Yes, that's a student in the Make X program, and he built a paraglider. He really will go up with a parachute on a homemade built fan. Nothing I've encouraged, I promise you that. But You'll also see him around town riding an electric scooter that he built himself.
And so are most of them, you know, like a documentary type artsy thing, or are they more techie, or what kind of distribution do we have?
It's a wide range. I mean, some of them ask for funding for intramural dodgeball game to build relationships between students and teachers. So dodgeball to movie making to bath and, bath projects. So it's really anywhere the teens' imagination can take them.
Okay. Is there a project list or a list of someplace that you post, some that we've missed?
Yeah, we keep it on the Think Fund page, so we can pass that information along. Yeah.
Thank you. It's great.
So also the teen center, how full is the teen center when it's usually open? Is it sparse or is it heavy?
So I mean, in terms of numbers, technically the teen center it says it can hold a capacity of 114 people. But for our participation numbers, 35 to 45 on a daily basis, that's pretty good for us. In previous years, we were lucky if maybe we had about 20 or so. But again, we're trying to identify options to bring more teens into the teen center with 35 to 45, starting with that, and then continuing to grow with the program. We can see the numbers continuing to grow. And one concern I guess we had was with the recent daylight saving time ending, obviously as it gets darker earlier, if that would affect the program and if participants would maybe dwindle down, but we were happy to see a consistency with those numbers.
I thought we used to have high school events there, like on Friday or Saturday night we'd have some high school hangout time.
So before Tyler and I, there was a Friday open hours for high school students, and it just wasn't well attended.
Oh.
What we heard from them is, like weekends, Friday, Saturday, Sunday, if they're going to do something, they want it to be kind of an organized, not just it's an open space. So that's why when we hold our events, we hold them at Mitchell Park. Like the TAB events are there. A lot of the other youth groups, when they hold events, poetry slams, books, a lot of those things all get held up at the teen center on Friday nights typically.
Okay. How do we recruit for I'm particularly thinking or the two councils that we're talking about earlier, the
Palo Alto Youth
Council and the Teen Advisory Board. How do we recruit for that in the high schools?
So we can go to their, it's not job fair, they have lunchtime opportunities for organizations to come and table. It's their club day, that's what it is. So when they get to distribute their clubs, we've been able to go to those club days. And then part of the role of a student that's on one of these advisory boards is to fill out or hand out applications to their peers when the time comes.
Okay, because I asked my son's a junior at Gunn, and I asked him about these, and he said, I don't know if they do. And so he was very ignorant about that, and he's an active kid. He does a lot of other things on campus, and so I'm not sure how to inform the people that this thing exists and what it does.
Yeah, and it's something we're always working on, just how wide of a net we can cast. And to be honest, there are a lot of options, clubs, teams, leadership groups. So there's going to be times that students don't know about all of them, but we really do our best to get out to those clubs and send things out in the flyers and get it on all the social media. To say that we're reaching everyone, I know is not true. That's for sure.
No, it's hard because they're so fragmented. It was easier, I think, 40 years ago where you just had one way of communicating, that was through the teachers or through the big events. Okay. Any follow-up questions? Go ahead.
If I can just go backwards through some of these. So at the beginning I said we'd be, and Ryan said the same thing, we'd like to know what kind of things we might help with. It seems like the biggest challenge is the communications. And I'm not sure how we help with that, but certainly awareness that communications to the community from all of these different groups or about all of these different groups is number one. And I would say that part of that, and Adam, I thought it was really interesting, you said, if you said, hey, all the teens come, we got this neat space, you didn't get anybody, but if you said, here's an activity, my sense was from the opening of that, and we had the same problem in the library, that when you say teens, the first thing that happens is the 10-year-olds and 12-year-olds maybe the 13-year-olds, oh, well, of course, this is our opportunity. We're teens. And as soon as those teens show up, the 15 to 18-year-old, middle school or high school students don't show up. And I think they know that when you say teens, when you say open time, you get the younger people, and that's why the older people don't go. But if you say it's a sophisticated activity, then you've got control over it. Does that make sense, Adam?
Definitely, and I think we use the word teens here, but we're very specific when we advertise for high school students or middle school students.
And I think we as an audience, back to Ryan's comment about we like we like granular answers and numbers. I think it would be useful to us to see that divided that way. I'm surprised that you don't have more volunteers or demand more volunteers. I think you could get volunteers to help with some of these programs. I don't think you need to answer that, but I would encourage that. I think another time I'd like to see more conversation relative to the 41 development steps or items. I don't think you can address all 41 in every one of these programs. I know in the library what we said is, okay, there's the 41, and we're going to do numbers 13, 12, and 24, or whatever it was, and focus on that. Another question I have is, you keep mentioning Castellea. Do the Castellea students, and I'm not sure I care specifically what the answer is, but do they get everything free the same way a Pally or a gun student would? Or does Castellea contribute financially to some of these programs?
So because the programs that are put on through the city, if the participants are coming from Pally, Gun, or Castellea, it's not so much like, I guess, something that they would have to contribute. It's set in our expenditure budget for the teen leadership groups.
Okay, but we know that 60%, 70% of Castellea students are not from Palo Alto, and many of them are not even from California. So I'm not sure I care that we pay or don't pay, but so the other thing that, just two last questions. One is $280,000, 700 participants. What price do we charge for these camps? Is that do we charge $100 or $50 or?
It depends on the camp, but it is generally more. For such as our Teen Week Out camps, because we're taking them to places such as theme parks like Great America, Raging Waters, and because we're obviously traveling to different sites, those camps can run anywhere from like 400 to 600 per week.
Okay, I assume that the answer was it depends. But if you've got $280,000 from 700 participants, that's an average of about 40. That would imply that there are several not paying for these, and that's okay if we have some sort of program that says you don't have to pay, you can be on a scholarship under certain circumstances. Is that correct?
Yes, the city does offer a fee reduction program, which can be up to 50% of the cost of a program.
Okay, so in another round of this, I'd be really interested in knowing, because what percentage are under some sort of scholarship, and how was that? Some general idea of how was that? Was it a needs based, or what was it? Because 280,000 sounds like a lot of money, but in 700 participants, it doesn't sound like an awful lot of money. And my last thing would be, and I'm sorry, pardon me? It is 400? Okay, then it is a lot of money. I'm not sure. You have the Teen Advisory Board and so on, and one of them is the Teen Library Advisory Council. I kind of doubt that it makes sense to have a Teen Parks and Rec Advisory Council, but it probably does make sense for us to identify as a council some of the items that come before us and refer them to one of your councils so that we get teen participation. And I think that relative to the leadership and the city leadership and some of the directions these kids are going. I think that that could be a good opportunity, both for us to get good input and for them to participate in some of the kinds of items that affect them and affect the city.
And I totally agree with you. I think that's something that I probably would have wanted to talk about tonight, was that, you know, what the Palo Alto Youth Council has, or there's a liaison from the city council to the Palo Alto Youth Council. So they come quarterly to just kind of come to a meeting, meet the kids, hear what's going on. There's some communication. And then at the end of the year, the youth council puts a presentation to the city council on basically their achievements for the year. And what I could see is that you guys could have that relationship with the teen advisory board, who's more activity based. I think it'd be useful for the students especially, but I think with enough leadership, it could be useful to you as well.
Yeah, one route that I would see is once a year they put together their list of what the Parks and Rec not do for them, what improvements. And it doesn't have to be long. They could sit there for 10 minutes and say, we'd like these types of programs, or we'd like the parks to have this type of facility. That would be very useful for us.
I think we could be even more active than that in terms of, gee, the dog park. Almost everything we look at, the dog park came before us. Should they be involved in the, should we ask them to offer their opinion on the dog park? It wouldn't take much for us to remember each item that comes before us to say, should we ask the teens, as opposed to just come before us once a year with a list. I think it would be good for us to contribute to that activity, and I think it could improve both of us.
One of the concerns the council had was too many adults going to this was going to make it uncool, and they wanted to kind of keep an arm's length away. But
I don't think we need to go to the meeting. We could just submit here's the topic. We don't have to be there. Would you like to comment on this? And they can say, no, we don't give a darn. Or they could say, yeah, we'd like to come and present on that. I'm not suggesting we show up at the meeting, just provide them opportunities to participate in civic government.
I have one more comment, and that is that the only concern I have about the teen center in Mitchell Park is what percentage of Pali students and what percentage of Jordan students and get to use the teen center in Mitchell Park. I suspect it's not 50-50, and I'm really excited when you talk about the teen programs reaching out to people in the schools and doing activities at the schools so that they don't have to come to the teen center for all the programs and all of the opportunities that you have. So, because this commission is supposed to be watching out for all the kids and all the neighborhoods. So that would be my only concern, is anything you can do to push your programs out from that Mitchell Park Center to all those other campuses would be great. Even having some meetings, 1 out of 3 meetings at Pali, or 1 out of 3 meetings at Gunn or at Terman. I don't know. But that's all I want to mention.
Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Do we know when you'll come back again? Is it like once a year you're going to come back, or is this just kind of free form?
Well, I asked them to come tonight because there was a request from one of the commissioners to come and present, and because we had new commissioners. I think it had been a year or so since we last heard this presentation, so it could be an annual summary, or it could be twice a year. I think something that might be helpful too, sort of piggybacking on what Commissioner McDougall said, is I know in San Jose, the San Jose Parks and Rec Commission, there's actually a team that comes and reports at every meeting on what they've been up to, what they've been working on. So that might be something we think about doing here, and maybe it's not every meeting, maybe it's, every quarter, that someone from one of the leadership groups can come and talk to the commission about what they're doing, and then you could even have some dialogue back with them on, well, would you be interested in thinking more about this or coming back with some advice on this? I did want to follow up on one more thing about that is we do try and offer some youth and teen programs that aren't about academics and aren't about another leadership opportunity, something else to put on their their college application, but things that allow them to be outside of that atmosphere. And so, like Tyler was mentioning, the TAB group does these special events for teens. That's really a place for them to come and be with their peers and do something fun and have it be a little bit structured, but it's planned by their peers for them. So we try to have sort of a broad range of things that they can do. If they're really into the leadership programs, that's great. If they want to do things that are more recreational and fun, that's great too. We're trying to really balance that.
Go on, David.
About the timing, if they wanted to present something to us toward the end of the school year about what they accomplished or things like that, and then if they wanted to come back, say around now or maybe October, and they say these are the things we want to do over the year, and maybe we'd like a little bit of help or something like that, that way they have a reason to come. So that timing would be great.
I think that makes sense, and I think that's a good idea.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, the next line of business, or next piece of business is ad hoc updates. Does anyone from ad hocs? David.
I'm sorry that no.
Adam?
Never mind. Darren gave us a tour of the Renzel Marsh and the ITT property that was pretty well received. There were 5 or 6 people from who are interested stakeholders in the Baylands, and that was really useful for everybody, I think. But it really does show how much of an interest there is in the ITT property. And originally, it was going to be a footnote in the Baylands comprehensive plan. But with all the interest in the Renzel Marsh and the ITT property, I think it's going to be more than that, because there was a lot of interest. And one of the big things was, do we need and want that building that's out there? And that raised a lot of issues, because it's in such poor shape, and it encourages cars and parking lots and things like that to get out there. And unfortunately, they put this building in the middle of the marsh. So it certainly would be nice to move it over near 101. And so anyway, those kinds of issues about what to do with that building, or even whether we need a building. And then the second big issue was you want a pristine center where animals and birds can be. And if you put a whole lot of trails all the way through it, there's no contiguous area. So that was another big issue that came up. So all these things we're going to talk about in the Baylands Comprehensive Plan, but I just wanted to give you a heads up. And then the second whole area that happened this past month is a whole bunch of activity with the Fry's property. And I think there's now a plan or something with that, big development at the Fry's property, and that has implications for the discussion we had earlier about the ATT property and expanding Boulware Park, and the timing of the updates to Boulware Park, and whether or not we're going to get another park, something like that. So I would sure like to hear more about that as an item in the next month or 2 or 3, because I think it's ripe for discussion.
I can look into that and see what sort of update we can provide.
I haven't heard anything new. That last I heard that they hadn't even subdivided the property yet.
Right. Nothing has happened.
Okay, any other?
So something that I found very handy and helpful was the short submissions that Tanya would solicit from the group. And it might have been on my suggestion that she start soliciting our short positions on each ad hoc committee. But are others interested in restarting that? Is it helpful, or is it more of a
I found it helpful.
Chore that?
Yeah.
I thought it was very helpful.
Okay.
Because we always can say no.
No update.
No action.
Right. For a particular matter.
Yeah.
Yeah. Oh, so over the summer, we started the practice of essentially sending email updates a week or 2 weeks in advance of these monthly meetings about what the ad hocs have been up to in the past month. So I think in the transition with Tanya leaving, we may not have done it this past month, and it's not a big deal by any means, but I definitely would like to pick up the practice again if others are in favor of it.
I totally agree. Any advance opportunity to, come prepared is useful.
Yeah. So dog parks, I think everybody's up to speed on where that's at. The other 2 ad hocs that I'm on are the Baylands 10-acre ad hoc committee, and just so the rest of the commission is kind of aware, that's essentially on hold while the Joint Powers Authority continues to do work on other areas of the Baylands. And it looks as though, based on what Darren's feedback is, and Jeff and Keith, please jump in here if I misspeak, but essentially that will not be an issue that's ripe until probably next summer and maybe even later than that.
Yeah, I wish Darren was still here, because when we had that tour, he was saying, well, maybe he thought like fall there'd be something to talk about. And so now, but in the last email, he bumped that out, and I'd like to talk to him about, maybe good just to get together, even if it's only for a half hour, just to kind of touch base and talk about issues and organize our thoughts. That might be useful.
Yeah, absolutely. And then the 7.7 acres in Foothills, and Jeff and Don, please jump in here too. I think that will be on our agenda for next month, it looks like. Darren is trying to get a meeting with the city manager's staff, and I think that will happen this week is the latest. So hopefully we'll have additional news next month.
That meeting's happening tomorrow.
My thought was the 7.7 acres and what to do with it, and that challenge that should be given to the teen council. I think the other thing that we should get is an update on what was happening with the golf course. It was supposed to be opening in November or whatever. We should get an update on that. And in terms of just ad hoc information, I just got a notice about the San Francisco Bay Resilience Assessment. And it's just a 1-hour webinar tomorrow. Chris, I'll give this to you. It looks like, we're on the Bay. It looks like something, if we don't already know about it, maybe somebody could just listen to a webinar for an hour. The other thing that's happening tomorrow is Project Safety Net is holding another meeting. They continue to provide the kind of youth support that I think needs to continue to be integrated with what we heard about in terms of the teen activity here. I'm the representative. I will probably try and go to this meeting, but everybody else should be aware of it as well.
Most of the updates for the ad hocs that I'm sitting on and the liaison role are really on hold, subject to waiting for staff resources, which leads me to my question in terms of staffing. And do we have a timeline or any progress regarding a new community services director? And also, is there an intention to backfill Tanya's position?
So related to your first question, the recruitment for the community services director is underway as we speak. When that decision made or when that process is final, I can't really speak to that. For Tanya's position, I believe, yes, it's the recruitment closed, or it's either open or it recently closed.
Yeah, we'll be having interviews next week.
That's great, and I recognize that the commission has been very ambitious or enthusiastic in terms of the number of ad hocs that we wanted to put on a list, and that does weigh on the staff resources. And to an extent, I think we knew this was going to be happening to a degree. We couldn't predict the number of openings that would further exacerbate the issue, but we appreciate the time and effort that the staff does put in and the quality of the effort when our number comes up. So thank you.
Okay.
May I ask real quickly? I'll bring up one of my favorite topics, which is field use and pickleball. It looks as though...
Adam's here, so...
Yeah, exactly. Adam's here, which is perfect. So field use and pickleball is on the agenda for next month. What about the lighting, temporary lighting issue at Coverly Field, which seemed to be a time-sensitive issue? Where does that one stand?
Can you talk to that, Adam? Our recommendation was that they work with staff or the field use ad hoc and get a recommendation.
Yeah, so we've been working with planning. We want to make sure we know what final steps need to be, who can give the final approval for this, and what permits will be needed even for a 1-month trial period. I have a meeting with someone from planning Thursday, so we should know the final steps by then. Then we're going to ask the youth soccer groups to come back, fill us more in with their plans. Some of the questions we've had for them was who would be using it, make sure that the technology they're going to use is going to be useful, that they actually have a lighting plan from a lighting company, because when they came to us with this, it was very much we think this could work. We need to know it will work before we push too far ahead. So they're working, the youth soccer groups are working on getting a more detailed lighting plan on that aspect as well. And as for pickleball, we have a company doing some general sketches of the Mitchell Park area so that we have a kind of a visual idea that we can show people. I will be meeting with a pickleball ad hoc group and a tennis group ad hoc group as soon as I have those drawings in hand, which I will invite the ad hoc group to.
I assume that the soccer people are renting these lights.
That is their plan, yes.
So I assume that the rental company can give them an evening worth and show them this is what it looks like, and we can do a dry run before we...
They could just bring the lights out, yes, but the ad hoc was more interested in a actual lighting plan, like an architectural plan of the lighting, so we could see light pollution, height of the lights that needed, the noise level from these. So we wanted more than just bring out these lights and turn them on. We wanted a more concrete plan.
And I think we need to make sure we know what the security system is to keep the lights under control.
Right, from disappearing in the middle of the night.
Keep them on or off at the right time.
But
Having said that, we were also concerned that whatever we decided would work for Coverly could be transferred if it needed to be in the future to try to find more field space. So Adam was really good about trying to think about all the potential problems or issues, not problems, but challenges that would come up, and really cognizant of the fact that the soccer groups are interested in having a decision soon. So we're all, I think, aware of the time pressure.
And so we're still shooting to get this down in, like, February is when they wanted to.
February is the 1-month trial they'd like to run, yeah. And we think we can still do that, I mean, hopefully.
Okay, very good, thank you. David?
I just want to make you aware that you should get the Green Meadow Association involved as soon as possible, because they will have input into, they will have strong feelings about it. And one of the two things that I wanted to make sure you covered is the making sure that the number of drop-offs and on Nelson in the middle of at a very dark time of the year, that the safety of the kids is taken into consideration, because it can be a real zoo there, and I hope that most of the people will park over in the parking lot, not on Nelson. And then the second thing is the lights, if you put them close to Nelson, facing east, so that you light the fields from the east, you'll get very little solar, because you're covered, the trees are in the way. So that means you're going to put them either in the center or on the far end, on the Coverly end. So you won't be able to cover the entire field. You're going to have to limit how much of the field they can light. And of course, if you put the lights on the Coverly side, facing Nelson, you're going to get light pollution unless you can focus them down on the field. So all those things, I hope you're taking into consideration.
This is where the lighting plan would.
Right, which is why we really wanted to do that, because we don't want to go without having a real concrete plan. We completely understand the neighbors and how close they are in proximity to this situation, and really we're going to put a lot of the onus back on the user groups to go out and win over the neighbors, because we understand how big of an impact this will be.
Can I suggest that we agendize this for a future meeting, because we're getting into a bit of a discussion on this topic.
Good point.
So we can come back in December with an agendized item. Thank you.
And in December, then Adam will have more information, hopefully have more information. Yeah. Okay. Okay, let's move on. The next is comments and announcements.
Can I, can I interject and go back to something Commissioner McCauley asked about the 10.5 acres? So our current fiscal year capital adopted budget does not have any funding for the 10.5 acres. It's in the fiscal year 19 projected budget, but that would need to be finalized in our next budget cycle. So it's forecasted out for fiscal year 19, but that would still need to be adopted by City Council in fiscal year 19. And that's just for outreach and sort of conceptual design of the 10.5 acres.
Right, exactly. So the outreach would happen sometime July 2018 and later. So that's why I said I think that things are more or less on hold on the Baylands 10 acres until then.
Correct.
Okay. Comments and announcements? Do you have anything? Nothing to add? Okay.
Forgive me. I know that the hour is getting a little bit late, but something that Ann and I were discussing before the meeting is the amount of paper we produce and consume. This month's packet was actually pretty thin compared to many of the packets, but I wonder if there isn't a way for us to consume less paper. I think right now that we essentially have copies provided to us here, and I understand that the public also needs copies, but I wonder whether there isn't some way to at least save on the copies you provide to us if we're all able to bring copies that we receive, or alternatively, if we just receive things electronically in the first instance, and I think that might reduce some of the burden on your staff anyway to deliver all these packets and whatnot.
I really appreciate that comment, and I would say that if anyone does not want a paper copy delivered or mailed to them, you can certainly let Catherine know, and we will not do that. I know there are some people who like the paper, especially when it is a large document, because it's easier to read on, for some people. But if you'd like the electronic version, just let Catherine know. If there's a way we can communicate that, heads up, this is, a big master plan report. Do you want it in a hard copy versus electronic? We could do that too. So we're definitely open to suggestions. We don't want to overburden anyone with paper, and we want to conserve as much as possible. So
I actually think what we're trying to decide is if we could challenge ourselves for a couple of months and say, we're not going to have any paper delivered to us this month. We're going to see how it works, and we'll have the agenda at our places and see what happens. And we might not be able to do it, but it would be, I think, fun to try. So.
Yeah. I think trying it for a couple months is a great idea, because if we don't like it, you just say, okay, it failed. But I suspect that we get used to it. I mean, at least half the time I go through and I'm looking on the screen anyway. So.
Some things are useful and some things are not. The things that are useful are the big, the tables of data that have been talked about, because it's good to be able to write on those. But to have the presentation with the beautiful color pictures, I don't necessarily need that. And so, I don't know, if we could be more selective, that would be great. And I think the agendas and things like that, I think just seeing them on the screen is probably okay.
Should we try next month not having paper copies?
I think it's really agenda, or it depends on what's on the agenda. If we're talking about double-page foldouts, that's something that I want a hard copy of to be able to see it properly. I think there may be a happy medium where staff can be selective about which items are sent to us and which items aren't. I think certainly the duplication of providing us a copy of the presentation in our packet, and then we show up here and we have the same presentation in paper form in front of us, that would be the low-hanging fruit of this discussion.
So how about Catherine and I discuss how we can make this work?
Okay.
As far as notifying, heads up, you might want this in hard copy, let us know. Can we?
Yeah.
Perfect.
Okay, very good. Okay, agenda for next month. We have Rinconada PIO, and what does that mean, tentative? That means that we're not sure whether he's going to have it ready, or?
I don't think that actually, I think that's a carryover, and I actually don't think that needs to come to the commission, particularly because this item is going to council on December 5th.
Oh.
So I think that's a carryover. It won't be coming back to the commission.
Okay.
There definitely will be an update on the Baylands Boardwalk, specifically related to CEQA, as well as a response to some of the comments that were received from the commission about like the handrails that spin and things like that. So Public Works will be coming back to give an update on that. I'll confirm with Darren on the 7.7 acres and the Buckeye Creek hydrology study based on our meeting with the city manager's office tomorrow on whether that's an update or some sort of action, and possibly the dog park PIO for Piers Park. Correct?
No.
Dog park rules. I'm sorry. After I said it, realized that was incorrect. The dog park rules, and then pickleball. Adam, can we come back next month with pickleball?
And also Cubberley lights.
And Cubberley temporary lights.
2 for 1. Yeah, that looks
And that sounds like a pretty full agenda.
pretty full.
Yeah.
One thing that fell off our list here was that restrictions on dedicated parkland. The attorney was going to come in and give us a tutorial. So sometime in 2018, let's.
Then what's the situation for the Cubberley, not the Cubberley, I'm sorry, the master plan funding? That we had that great report on, but now where is that? Is it gone?
When is that going to council?
Oh, we have, so we've been looking at that table a little bit more that we presented, and before we go to council, we're going to be meeting with our city manager and chief financial officer, as well as the city attorney, just to ensure that what we're presenting to council is everyone's on the same page and we're saying appropriate things. So that meeting is happening in the next 2 weeks with the city manager's office, and it will determine at that point what the next step is, whether it's coming back here or going to council. Not exactly sure.
My preference would be go to council as soon as you can. And if it's incomplete, it's incomplete. But just give them an update of saying, this is what we're looking at, and do you have any guidance? Because we still haven't gotten a crisp guidance from the whole council. Certain council people have said their opinions, but they haven't had a full discussion on this, so.
Right, we want to make sure we do have all of the appropriate facts. I mean, going back to, what some of the commissioners here say, present the data and the information we have. If we're including information on a potential new tax measure for the community, we want to make sure that we're presenting the correct data on that, which would be like a ballot measure, right? So if we're going to present all the options, but we just need to make sure that what we're presenting to them is the correct.
Yeah,
and
but the other option is that some of the council members may say, no, we don't want you to go down this road, stop. And if you got that direction, now you've saved yourself a lot of work by going back early. So that's why I think getting the whole council to discuss it and give you direction might ensure that you don't waste your time. David?
Did anything come out of the 101 bridge discussion yesterday that we need to have an update on or anything like that? Or was it pretty much a rubber stamp?
I was not there, so I did not. Do you go to last night's meeting?
It was approved by council. Do you want to?
It was approved by council. The two big issues were signage, and once the signage got brought up by one, it got piled on. My admonition to anybody who's going before council, that's the kind of thing that you have to anticipate, and it was a big deal. The second issue was, it used to be $6 million, and then it was $10 million, and now it's $16 million. But the $16 million includes $2.4 million of salary that wasn't in there previously, so we're comparing prunes to apricots or whatever. And then the issue was, well, we've gone from 10 million to 16 million, and Google's still at 1 million. Why isn't Google at 1.6 million? And why shouldn't Intuit and all these others contribute as well? And my argument to that, I'm sorry you asked, so I'm going to tell you, was I asked the group, what's the use case? And is the use case totally commercial, or is the use case totally weekend travelers or whatever? And if that had been anticipated, then the question to who should pay for it might have been better answered. And so Ryan's laughing at me because I keep asking about signs. I'm going to keep asking as we go forward with various things, what is the use case? Have we thought about what the purpose of this is? So that causes us to think about it. It was approved in the end, but there was several amendments to what was recommended, and the amendments were all in the direction of signage and paying for it and so on.
But Google's not doing this out of the goodness of their heart. This million will be credited to future mitigation when they do construction. So
Absolutely, and but that needed to be understood in the conversation, and I think there was some council members who thought they were doing it out of the goodness of their heart, and why shouldn't they have a bigger heart? That wasn't the purpose of it.
do I have a motion to adjourn?
Yes. Unanimously, it was motioned to adjourn.
Okay. All in favor?
Aye.
Motion second and voted all in one fell swoop. Okay. So our next meeting is the 19th? Okay.